thoughtful discussion, calibrate on strategic initiative, and ensure that our county continue to strive. Your insights, expertise, and commitment to public service are invaluable, and I look forward to the ideas and solutions that will emerge from our time together. Our county manager and her staff have planned a packed agenda with the top priority of 25-26 year. Commissioner, I ask that you hold your question until after each presentation is done to allow staff to present their recommendations. Please keep an open mindset. We task staff with the daily operation of our county government, and they have worked hard. So please give them respect and keep it an open mindset. Remember, these are staff recommendations, and Manager Perry understands that ultimate decisions come from this Board of Commissioners. With that being said, there will be no public comments or outbursts. If so, you will be asked to leave. So with that said, let's have a productive and inspiring retreat. So now we got our 2025-26 budget discussion, starting out with our capital improvement, and I'm going to turn it over to our county manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So good morning, everyone. So as Ms. Fain stated, we do have a packed agenda today, and we're grateful for the opportunity to present these recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners today. And so first on the list is a detention center. So we're going to ask Mr. William Mitchell to come up and present some information the sheriff wants to come first. I'm sorry, I apologize. Sheriff Brain wants to give an opening statement before the presentation itself about the detention center. My apologies.
Good morning. Good morning. Madam Chair, do you mind if we pray?
Go ahead. Thank you.
Heavenly Father God, we come to you just as humble as we know how, giving you all the praise and glory. Father God, we ask you to touch this board in a special way, Father God. Touch the public safety staff out here in the audience, Father God, and the public here also, Father God. Father God, we do everything in our authority and the power to glorify and magnify you, Father God. Father God, even though we may disagree, let us come on one accord and agree in moving forward, Father God, and be understanding and be receptive to each other what they have to say, Father God, and their opinions, Father God. Father God, touch us individually, touch us collectively. God, we love you and we praise your holy name through your son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sheriff Brain.
Good morning. I just want to make an open statement. Myself and Major Mitchell has been preparing for this for a period of time, some stats and things we need to work on. And I just want to say, I know that the Vance County Detention Center has a lot of deficiencies, some that I inherited and some that was created since I've been sheriff. Whether who we're going to point to blame or who wants to fall on the sword, I don't think that's the time and place. I think we need to come together and let's move forward and trying to figure out how we're going to address these deficiencies. Major himself has come up with a plan, but I just want to say, even if we are able to address these deficiencies, we still have an issue with our detention center regarding whether the county commission, the board of commissioners will make a decision whether we're going to build a new detention center or not. Addressing these deficiencies is only a temporary Band-Aid, only a Band-Aid. When you continue to reach full capacity at a facility, there is no room to maneuver and to grow for the safety of the inmates and the safety of my staff. So therefore, I plead with the Vance County Board of Commissioners and looking in the future and making the decision and making the commitment and building a new detention center for the county of Vance. We're at the position right now where people are walking into our jail, cutting the fence open because they can drive 15, 20 feet away from the jail and come in, cut the fence and knock a hole through the brick wall. We're at the point where detention officers are not applying, not because of money. Money is not always everything. They're not applying because of safety. They feel unsafe for working at the Vance County Detention Center. We have numerous assaults at our detention center on both staff and inmates on themselves. We face the problem each and every day that we operate. We're in violation of North Carolina General Statutes of classifications. We got people that shouldn't be together for certain reasons, for felony and misdemeanor charges, mental illness, for sickness, for violations, for behavioral problems. We have no place in that detention center, and we will never have a place in that detention center to meet the classification required by the state of North Carolina. So even if we do correct our deficiencies, we will continue to have those issues regarding the classification at the Vance County Detention Center. I thank you for listening to me. I'm gonna turn this over to Major Mitchell. Thank you.
Morning, can y'all hear me? Honorable Board, I appreciate y'all letting me come up here and speak with you for a few minutes about our detention facility. What you may not be aware of is within the last 2 weeks, the major was basically charged with the upkeep and maintenance and the day-to-day operations of our facility, tenders of resignation. So this has been placed in my lap in between Sheriff Brame and I. We've brainstormed and tried to crunch some numbers in the last 2 weeks to give you folks a couple of options that we have come up with. Before I get started, I would like to tell you that I've been in contact, honestly, probably 6 days out of the week with Chris Wood, who's the chief jail inspector. He and I spoke again this morning. I think the only time we don't speak is on Sunday. He did send me a text message this morning, and I promised him that I would read this text message to you because I don't want to misrepresent where we are. And this came from the chief jail inspector. He said, I know I told you this before, but I wanted to say it again before your meeting with the County Board of Commissioners. We have not issued you an order to take any action as far as closing or depopulation at this point. You folks are taking proactive action to address your issues. All this is good, but I'd hate for it to come out that we've ordered action. So what I'm getting ready to tell you, I don't want you to think that there's been a threat of a closure or depopulation. That came straight from the inspector, but that is the direction that it's headed to. As of last week, I had a meeting with Jeff Harm. I believe JJ was in the meeting. And Mr. Harm told us, and he's the boss, JJ specifically asked him about how close we were to a forced closure. And Mr. Harm's response was, it's out of my hands at this point. It's been forwarded up to the secretary. And that would be the Secretary of Division of Health and Human Services. All right, so having gotten that out of the way, in the last 2 weeks, I've become aware of an inspection that was done. We are dual inspected twice a year. Was made aware of a list of deficiencies, which I've included in that packet for y'all from our July inspection, 16 pages long. The jail was again inspected in December, and there was, I think, 9 deficiencies more than there were in July. And the best I can tell, and the best the state inspector's office can tell, there's not been a whole lot of forward movement to address some of these issues. Well, then I got to looking through the issues, and I just don't see how we can effectively address them, in my mind, without at least a temporary closure of the facility. I met with a contractor, actually 2 contractors, Monday morning. I provided them a copy of the plans for the building, and we did a walkthrough, and I gave them a copy of the deficiencies. And we spent probably an hour and a half, 2 hours out there, even went on to the roof of the building. They are preparing a quote, a bid to address all the deficiencies listed. Ms. Renee and I spoke, of course, because of the suspected amount that that's going to cost, we would have to put this out for bid. So I've also got in contact with 2 other contractors that do this type of work. So basically I have narrowed it down to 4 options, and they're included in your packet. Best of my understanding is I have researched it. I think the facility was built sometime in maybe the late 1950s. Then an expansion was done, and then a remodel was done. So basically, we'd be looking at the fourth iteration at this same location. First option is we don't take any action at all. And if we don't, the secretary will in fact issue that order. I mean, that's where we are. We've got another option that we could move our inmates to outside facilities for a period of 6 to 8 months. The one contractor believes 6 months, all of the repairs could be completed. Clearly, he hasn't submitted a bid yet, but he estimated it'd be somewhere around 1.75 million to address the issues in the deficiency list. So you're looking 1.75 million. If we had to move our inmate population, that's going to roughly cost you another 2.5 million for a 6-month period, or 5.1 million annually. That cost for moving the inmates does not include, we have to maintain the detention staff because we'll need transportation officers and of course some capital outlay money for extra vehicles to go pick these inmates up and bring them back to Vance and then take them back to wherever they're being housed. Another option is we can do it one pod at the time. We can depopulate H and F dorm, which is where our females are currently housed. And then we could move one pod of male inmates into those dorms and then address the issues one pod at a time. That will result in a protracted time frame. And the contractor told me that that would, in essence, double the cost of the repairs. My suggestion is, and this would be your last option, I don't see how we can get away from depopulating that jail. So there again, you know, you'd be looking at about $5 million annually, which I think the jail budget for 24-25 was 4.9 million. So you'd be slightly over that to house our inmates somewhere else. Is that we actively seek a new location and build a facility that is actually designed to house the quantity of inmates that we have. As of yesterday, we were 21 head overpopulation and already had 19 inmates in other facilities. That facility, and I would love to take y'all down there and let you go and walk through and see what we're dealing with. As the sheriff referenced, he and I got called out January the 1st. The exterior perimeter fence was breached. It was only about a 4-foot cut in the fence to the ground. Gained access into the inside yard and were basically delivering contraband through a hole that had been busted through an 8-inch solid block wall with a brick veneer into a dorm, specifically cell A3. We called a fencing company, and that repair was $2,790 to repair that fence. Again, last Monday, the fence was breached in the same location again. This time they cut the lock to the interior fence and actually went into the yard and were pushing contraband through that hole in the wall. A3 had been secured. We secured it that day, back in the 1st. However, that doesn't resolve the problem. We've got outside people breaching our perimeter and coming into our facility. That day, I asked a hard question. I said, I'm curious why this hole hasn't been fixed since January the 1st, and here we are the 21st. And I was told, well, bricklayers this and bricklayers that. Well, I'm a bricklayer. So made a couple phone calls and that hole was repaired that day. So that has been resolved. But we've got a serious problem. Night before last, an inmate was assaulted, taken to Mariah Parham, got multiple stitches over his right eye. Last week, we were sitting with 4 inmates at 3 different facilities: Duke, Chapel Hill, Lewisburg, and Henderson, Mariah Parham. As it stands now, the pods that we have individual cells where we can lock down the inmate population in those dorms. But we are required by law to allow the inmates out for 1 hour, 3 days a week. In that brief period of time, the inmates have managed to basically destroy every door or the hinges, so we can't secure them any longer. So the inmate population is basically running the entire pod, and we can't lock them down. Week before last, I was sent a video. Here gives my first involvement with the facility. But one of the entrance doors to a dorm, the locking mechanism apparently was not working, so they had used a makeshift chain to keep it secure. Well, the inmates figured out how to pop that off. The entire inmate population, A dorm, flooded into the main hallway and were attempting to breach the door into B dorm. That is a video that you should really take a look at. If they'd have gained access to B dorm, you'd have had bodies all over the floor because they were feuding. So first thing that morning, we went in there about 15, 20 deep. We searched A dorm, got a bunch of shanks out of there, makeshift weapons. But we've got to do something. We've got inmates sleeping on the floors. In the inspection, you'll see that we've got inmates using the bathroom and the shower because their toilets don't work. And I certainly appreciate the position that you folks are in. Nobody wants a tax increase. I live in another county and I pay plenty of taxes as it is. But I would leave you with this. We have something in this country that I like to call the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And I told inmates the same thing. Every person in that jail is not a criminal. They're charged with a crime, but their cases have not been adjudicated. They wouldn't be here. They'd be in Department of Adult Corrections. But the standards that these men and women are having to live in, it's horrific. It's horrible. And I've spent a lot of time the last 2 weeks going to these dorms and sitting down and speaking to the inmates. And the two jail inspectors were with me. And they couldn't believe that I would just sit there and talk to them. I said, these guys ain't gonna hurt me because I'm here to help them. All they want is someone to listen to them. But you've got men sleeping on floors, dorms with one bathroom working, no hot water. I mean, we owe it to the inmate population, and we're required by law to give them these things and to keep them safe. We had an incident 1st of January, end of December, where 4 of your COs were assaulted at the same time. And that's also in there. Inmate made a caustic concoction, and just be honest with you, a bunch of human waste, and threw it in their eyes, threw it in their face. 3 weeks ago, had a female CO was assaulted by an inmate, had required some stitches, and she resigned over it, and I can't blame her. So at this point, the only action that we cannot take is inaction. I mean, that's the only option that we do not have. Regardless of what the board decides, it's going to cost money. It's going to cost money. And I guess my question would be, are we going to continue to put lipstick on a pig, or are we going to bite the bullet and build a new facility? Now, I'm going to support the board. Whichever direction y'all go, we'll make it work. Okay. But inaction is no longer an option. I've got till February the 8th to let the state know what the pleasure of the board is going to be. That is my timeline. I'm hoping if we can make a decision, you folks can make a decision, that I'll be able to buy us some time, because if we have to depopulate the jail one way or the other, if we have to empty it, that's a logistical nightmare for the sheriff and I, because we've got to find facilities that will house them. A lot of folks don't want our inmates because it's just a different breed of folks. I got a call from the assistant district attorney's office last Friday afternoon. I'm ready to go home. We've got an inmate that has to be moved because the DA's office was informed they were going to be murdered in their dorm because they had given testimony against some other people. So of course, we can't not take action. So I called Franklin County, talked to the sheriff. He said, we'll take your inmate temporarily. He was carried down there on Friday. Sheriff White called me on my personal cell phone Sunday afternoon. He said, you've got to come get your inmate. He said, he's tearing my jail all to pieces. And I can't fault Sheriff White because, well, he explained it to me, he doesn't want his COs to have to use force on one of our inmates. Because when you use force, there's going to be a lawsuit. And he can't get sued because of one of our inmates. So literally, he stayed there less than 48 hours and had to be picked up. But regardless, we've got to be able to move forward in some direction, in some form or fashion. I don't offer you any solutions that are easy, and they're all going to cost money. But here again, I would just strongly recommend that we not continue with a fifth iteration on the facility we already have. So I'll take any questions that you have. If I can answer them, I'll certainly try.
My question is, Sheriff did an open statement. I can understand that you're overcrowded. I understand that. But what I can't understand is even though we know the jail is old, we understand that. Sheriff said that, he inherited something and some deficiency came while he was there. Sheriff been in position 2 terms. So my thing is, and plus with the cameras, where, with the hole in the wall, where's the cameras? That can
Well,
see, because it takes time to take a brick out.
I'm glad you brought that up. That was a conversation that Mr. Wood and I had yesterday and again this morning. I'm very glad you brought that up because I forgot to mention it. There's over 20 cameras that are not functional in the facility. Now, the board, as I understand it, keep in mind, I just became aware of these issues 2 weeks ago. But as I understand it, in 2023 budget allocation, you folks allocated just south of $400,000 for the camera system to be upgraded in the facility. Well, there was no forward movement, as I understand, because the old cameras are still there and still not working. So I reached out to a fellow named Glenn, and I believe he is a contractor for Cornerstone. And I asked him, I said, well, this is who I am, and I've got a question. I said, where are we at on this camera system? Why has there been no forward movement on it? He said, oh, no, we're good. We're good. We've still got an open PO with y'all. I said, that's not even possible. I said, the money was allocated in 23, 24, and we don't carry open POs past July 1st the next fiscal year. So you don't have an open PO with us. I said, so it's been a year. So explain to me, whose fault is it this project's not moved forward? Is it on your side or is it on our side? He said, well, a little bit of both. I said, well, I need clarification. Whose fault is it? And apparently in that project, his company has to work in conjunction with an electrician to do the runs in the pools for the wiring. He said they put it out to bid for 3 different electricians, electrical companies. And Mr. Glenn told me that 2 of the electricians were a no-show, and the 3rd electrician that did show was a no bid, wouldn't do the work. I said, so what you're telling me is that we've been sitting on this for a year because you can't find an electrician. He said, yeah. I said, well, I'm also an electrician. I said, I can find you an electrician. But here again, that money has been rolled back into the general fund. I've never heard of any local government that would keep an open PO into the new fiscal year. So long story short, I'm having a teleconference with Glenn at 1 o'clock this afternoon to go over his proposal. There's some things in there that I'm not fond of. So I've also reached out to another company and I'm having a teleconference with them as well, hoping that they will give us a bid. But I guess the question goes back, do we want to spend $400,000 on a camera system if we haven't made a decision as to what direction we're going with the facility? But I am looking into that. But I guess to address that specific question, some of the exterior cameras were not functional on that side of the yard, which if you're familiar with fire service, would be on the B side of the building. There was a camera that was functional that could see inside of a dorm. But literally you can't see through a steel door. Because we can't secure them doesn't mean the inmates won't close them. So we can't see through that one camera what's going on in that particular cell. It is believed in the shower, A3 is on the second floor of A dorm. Around the upstairs shower, there's what I call I guess it's like a steel J channel. Apparently they had managed to rip a piece of that down. It's probably 20, 21 inches long. And we believe that's what they utilized to slowly chisel away at the block. Now, we can't determine if the veneer was destroyed from the outside of the facility or from the inside. But we do have video footage from a camera in the yard that clearly shows a man breach the fence, cut the lock to the interior yard, and actually walk up to the facility's exterior wall. So for all we know, he could have been the one that damaged the exterior.
Again, that goes back to some administration still not carrying through that what was given. Secondly, I want to know, regardless of how old the building, why is the upkeep? Somebody's still responsible for maintaining a building to make sure that it stays up to date. It doesn't matter if it's 50, 60 years old. I've seen buildings still in top-notch condition, and people are carrying out the duties of making sure it's stocked and making sure it's clean, making sure whatever's needed repair. That's the problem that I'm having, that you got money, but why isn't someone upkeeping what should have been upkeep, regardless of, take away being overflow, too many people. That building still needed to be maintained better than what's in the condition that it's in.
Madam Chairperson, and I understand what you're saying, but when you only have one person, and for the history of the Vance County Detention Center, only having one person to maintain that whole facility, who's just a maintenance person, not qualified as an electrician, and you're dealing with a building that's old, antiquated and outdated, and things are falling apart at the seams. It's just hard for one person to maintain that facility. And Commissioner Brumman and myself have walked through there. Commissioner Brumman, along with H.G. Reynolds, have walked through there, and we pointed out some things, and they have refused or just neglected and come in and do the service that we requested them to do. They promised myself and Major here a couple of weeks ago that they would have a bid for him or a quote, and we still yet didn't get that to 2 weeks later. And there's a constant battle trying to get someone to come in and work at that facility.
If I could add to that, when you folks have time to peruse that document that I gave, if you'll look at the list of those deficiencies, it's difficult for you to read that list and then visualize in your mind what you're dealing with. All right, so to add to what the boss just said, a lot of those deficiencies have been in a state of deterioration for 20 years or more. All right, I climbed up on the roof with the two contractors, and I included some photographs in there of the roof. And they did tell me to make sure that I was aware that if it was deemed a new roof was needed, it would be an astronomical amount of money. But when I was walking around up there and looking at the HVAC units, I wire them up, I'm an electrician. And I looked down and I asked the maintenance guy, I said, are these on natural gas? He said, yeah. I said, I know they are because the fittings at the HVAC units are yellow. Well, if you'll notice in the list of deficiencies, they put in there that our natural gas lines are not properly identified. Well, they're certainly not yellow, and that's what drew my attention to it. They're almost rusted through. I can't tell you how old those lines are. It's like I said, this is not just something that is taking place. And the boss will tell you, I'm not one who's going to stand here and just defend my boss. But these deficiencies have been continuing and an ongoing problem for at least 20 to 30 years based upon the damage that I personally witnessed when I went over there and walked that facility. I mean, it's nothing that can be laid at the blame of any one administration. And like I said, I'll be more than happy to take anyone that would like to take the same walk. I caution you, getting up on the roof, my legs are still sore. But This is not something that has happened overnight. It's been a history of neglect is what it is. Issues.
Somebody is blamed for bringing in materials for shanks
You are, well,
or whatever. I don't
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah,
mean,
you are
got
correct.
inmates. They're not outside.
yes, ma'am,
Somebody's bringing those.
you are correct.
I understand.
You are correct. Now, that is something that I would love to speak with you in private. I'd be happy to sit down with the board in private. But there is a plan in place to address that issue as well.
I want to go another direction. You've laid out the information about the four things here. I'd like your response to not say we're going to build a new jail. It's not say we're going to build a new jail, but if we were to build a new jail, all these deficiencies that you're talking about while we're building a new jail, we talk about a cost for building a jail, but then we're going to carry an annual cost for maintaining. You indicate the inmates that we have are very destructive, very destructive. So while we build a jail, we're going to still be incurring millions of dollars of costs while a jail is being, because the jail is not going to be not doing the next 4 years, even if we decide to be
Yes, sir.
5 years or more. So what the county still will incur these expenses that you've laid out here as we build a jail. So we're not talking about $45 million to build a jail. We're talking about an additional, what,
5 million a year.
20?
Yes,
We're talking about $60 to $70 million,
Yeah.
right?
Well, you are correct. And here again, I'm looking at it from the financial end as well. Currently, your detention facility's annual budget is 4.9 million. That's what it was for 24-25. So that money would still be required if we have to move our inmate population. It will still be required, and it may increase up to, like I said, 5.1, so $200,000 increase. That's a possibility. So yes, you will still have to basically fund your detention facility if you were to decide to move forward and try and put a shovel in dirt to make a new facility. So that you're looking about a $200,000 increase in the encumbrance, yeah.
But tell me something else. You talk about the type of inmates we have, even we to build a new facility, based on your experience and what you're seeing. Are they going to destroy that?
Glad you asked. I've had that conversation. Keep in mind, I've never, and I have no intentions of managing a jail. Okay? That is not my purview. But I've looked into what we are required. I've actually sat down again last night just reading the statute, speaking with the inspector. My recommendation is, and the boss is on board, this will be implemented. As I said, we're only required to let inmates out of their cell 1 hour a day, 3 days a week. The statute does not state that we must pop all doors in a dorm at the same time. So it's very difficult for an inmate to, one, acquire contraband or tear up their doors if they're secured behind it. So what the sheriff and I propose, whether you build a new facility or whether we continue to repair the one we have, this policy will be enacted and will not change. Once we are where we can secure the inmates in their cells, they will be let out 1 hour a day, 3 days a week, one cell at the time. So you're looking at no more than 4 inmates at one time. Some of them are dual bunk, some of them are four head rooms. There will be a CO in the pod with them. They will be put back in, then another cell will be opened. So they will have continuous supervision, eye-to-eye supervision, and lock back down. So they will not be able to just run amok. And apparently y'all spent, this is a number I've not been able to verify, hundreds of thousands of dollars anyway. We put new doors in the facility, as I understand it, 2 or 3 years ago. They tore them all to pieces with a broom handle. Keep in mind,
Somebody can tear a piece with a broom handle.
sir,
What kind of doors do we have that somebody can tear on a piece with a broom
I'm
handle?
glad you asked. These are extremely heavy steel doors on big, heavy steel hinges. Well, apparently, and it literally took them less than 30 seconds. They wedged the broom handle, which we got to give them something to keep their cells clean. They wedged the broom handle behind the door and continue to force the door until they sprung the hinges. So the doors are not tore up, but the hinges are sprung. Now, you're talking about cost savings. I got a quote to repair those hinges, to repair 40 hinges. The quote came in Wednesday, I believe, $85,000. I talked to the maintenance fella down there. He's got the hinges. He's got them. I said, why have they not been put on? What are we waiting on? Well, he can't do it himself, this, that, and the other. Well, I reached out to another agency, Franklin County, and they agreed that they would loan us their maintenance department. They'll give us their maintenance crew. So we can go in there and try and get these hinges repaired. I'm a daggone if I can stomach paying $85,000 to have hinges repaired. But if the facility is either repaired or a new facility built and the inmate population is managed in accordance with state regulations and North Carolina statute, these problems should not repeat as far as inmates damaging the facility. Now, as far as upkeep, if an inspector comes in, if you have a new facility or you repair the one you have, the list of deficiencies should be small if they find any. Well, a small list of deficiencies is quite easy to repair as opposed to 16 pages.
Can I ask you and Curtis and our county manager another question? You talk about trying the folks from Franklin to lend you their repair folks and everything. Does the repair comes out of the sheriff's budget? Does that come out of the sheriff's budget?
Yes, sir.
How come as a county, we can't hire a maintenance crew
Mhm.
to maintain? How come we can't hire a maintenance crew? Forget you, because all I hear is that we got one person to do this. That's not working.
Right.
Let's forget, that's not working. Let's look at trying to find qualified electrician, qualified people. I'm amazed that you said every time I have an issue, you say, well, I'm an electrician, I didn't turn.
Mhm.
There are people that are looking for work out there. There are
Mhm.
companies that are looking for work out there. How come from the sheriff's budget, we cannot hire a maintenance crew that's going to go in and take care of these deficiencies on a monthly basis?
I agree.
So can I speak to that just a little bit? So that's a part of my recommendation, depending on what direction you all decide to go in. So historically, the maintenance staff person has reported to the sheriff or the jail administrator. And so Curtis and I had a conversation, and my recommendation is to ask the Board of Commissioners for maintenance staff, whatever direction you all decide to go in, that reports directly to the maintenance director, and we oversee the facility moving forward. That's the direction that we want to go
Basically,
in.
what they're saying,
Mhm.
they need help.
Yes, sir.
They need help.
Absolutely. And our maintenance staff now can't handle it. So we would definitely need additional staff to be able to support a facility, whether it's a new or renovated facility.
Further discussion. Okay,
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I will tell you this as well. I got this call yesterday. We're having some problems with the control booths. We've got two of them where basically a booth operator can push a button and access doors, open secure doors and whatnot throughout the facility. Most of those don't work. So I questioned, well, what's the problem? Why they don't work? Apparently it's, for lack of a better term, what we have is antiquated technology. And the man explained to me that the circuit boards that operate those booths are not designed to continuously be switched on and off with voltage running to and continuously. And he said the circuit boards just can't sustain it any longer.
And that's a problem we continue to have when you got one contractor installing this part and another contractor installing that part to work together. So who blames each other for the fault? So, and that's
I
what,
think what she says, a plan, I think we can do a plan of action to address some issues and everything, because we're not going to solve the jail problem in 1 to 2 to 3 years. It's gonna take some time.
and I understand. And to get back to your question, we asked Major Mitchell about building a new facility. Why wouldn't they not tear that up? Because first of all, it would be designed differently. At the facility we have now, there are 4 inmates in 1 cell.
But you just told me, he just said in Franklin County, he sent somebody to Franklin County.
Yeah.
Franklin County has a new design jail, and the man told you, come get your inmate. So
And the reason they do that, because their families are telling them, if the sheriff send you to another county, act up, and they'll send you back home, because the families don't want them away from Vance County. That's why they do that.
who's running the jail then? Inmates.
I want to start where you started out, population.
Yes, sir.
How many inmates are in there in excess of 2 years.
We've got some in there, charged with capital murders over 4 years.
6 years. 6.
Got one in there that's been right at 7 years now.
Yes.
So first thing we do, we've got how many capital cases?
39.
39? And that's in our jail. And plus we have some others,
That is correct.
safekeeping in other places.
That's correct.
So we have 39 individuals, a lot of them over 2 years, that have not seen a courtroom yet. That's the that's where we've got to start,
Well, can I address that?
please.
I had a meeting with elected district attorney Mike Waters, one of his ADA's charity. I don't know her last name. Melissa Pelfrey, and resident senior superior court judge Dunlow. And I addressed that. This has maybe been a month or two ago, trying to figure out why we couldn't get these cases adjudicated and moved through the court system. And this came straight from Superior Court Judge Dunlow. As it stands now, there's only one public defender on the capital list. And they are not from Vance County, they're from Durham. And the way it was explained to me, attorneys do not want to represent capital offenders in Vance. They don't want our cases. So here again, I'm not going to defend folks. I'm just going to state the facts. It's very difficult to lay the blame on cases not being moved on district attorney's office when there's only one public defender that'll take a case in this county. And that can be confirmed through John Dunlow. You can speak with Mike Waters, but they cannot be compelled or forced to represent these defendants.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you this, some of the problem, that was explained to me, the attorneys claim that they can't gain access to their clients. Well, that's not true, because literally yesterday I pulled the record at the jail, the attorney log. But at the end of that conversation months ago, I also typed up a letter, gave it to the resident superior court judge and gave it to Mr. Waters. I said, disseminate this letter, this new policy out amongst the bar, which has been done. So now anytime an attorney, whether it be a misdemeanor or a capital defender, if they want to see their client, they just call me. All they do is call me. I get the inmate brought from the facility to the sheriff's office, and they sit down, they have their in-person meeting. There's a deputy posted at the door. We carry them straight back. And it is actually, that has worked perfectly. I had a man that I charged with first degree murder in 2022. Twice this week, I brought him over. I couldn't, because he's my defendant. Brought him over, met with his attorney. He's been in jail since 2022. And after the in-person meetings at the sheriff's office, he signed his plea yesterday at 2 o'clock in front of the Superior Court judge, and he's going to Raleigh. So things have moved in the right direction, but we still only have one capital defender that will take cases in Vance County.
Okay, then that needs to be communicated to our board. We need to communicate with the Attorney General of the state of North Carolina and get that resolved.
I agree.
That's an issue that we as a board should have some influence
Yep.
to
Well-
move that forward.
I met with the Attorney General, what night before last? I went to Raleigh. I met Wednesday night. I met with the Attorney General and I expressed those concerns to him. I met with the new Attorney General and his staff. And I expressed concerns about how slow things are moving in Vance County regarding to our prosecution and the inmates and the overflow and overcapacity that we have at our detention center. So I have relayed that to him personally.
What we should have is we should have one of our courtrooms dedicated to capital cases, and there should be a judge here until we get them all caught up.
Well, just like Major just said, we have defendants that they know the game. They've come to court and said, I fired my lawyer. How can you fire somebody? You don't hire nobody, taxpayers pay for it. Then the case go back from all that work and they start all over again. So that happens a lot here in Vance County. That's why we have people who've been in jail 6 or 7 years, because they come to court and say, I don't want that lawyer anymore, because they think they're not getting a good deal on that case. But I just want to share this with you. You know, even if we clear up some of the doctors and some of the inmates in our detention center, we have a threshold a repository sitting there waiting right now. And then Vance, we have two systems, a system in Vance County, the sheriff office and the police department are separate. And just in the repository for the sheriff office alone, in the e-warrant system, we have over 700 warrants to be served. The police department probably have more of that due to the condensed population within the city limits. Child support warrants, just in Vance County alone. Lieutenant Guzman does a great job on working with them, trying to get them in court on the date so they can make arrangements not to go to the detention center. I over have 160 child support warrants that I can go out right now and physically arrest and put in my detention center. I got up with probation and parole last week. They want to do a roundup, and I said, please wait, talk to the judge first so we can get some bonds for these people. I can't afford to put these people, these are just Vance County cases, not another county cases. They want to do a roundup and ask for my assistance in picking up 40 people right here in Vance County to arrest and put in the detention center. So, you know, even if we move some out, we got a whole list, a whole laundry list of people ready to be, that I know they're not going to make bond and going to end up in the Vance County Detention Center.
Okay, next issue, the hinges. Those hinges are not designed to support those doors.
Well,
Too light for those doors, and that's why they're being sprung.
actually, the hinges come with the doors. I think the plan is, or at least the proposal that was given by Cornerstone, was to use the hinges, the replacement hinges that we have, and to weld them as opposed to using the little security bolt. But there again, the biggest issue, the inmates must be maintained behind that door. It doesn't matter what type of hinge we put on there. If they just run amok and have full access to everything out there for an unlimited period of time, they're going to tear it up.
Okay, for the past 2 or 3 years, I've asked for a budget, what jails similar to ours had for budget for maintenance on an annual basis. I've not been able to get that number.
I can get it. I can get that information for you from Franklin County.
Well, Franklin County has a newer facility.
Well,
There are some older facilities in the state
that facility was built in '96.
right.
And I requested that information from Major Hawkins, and he wasn't able to gather any data, but I did request it.
I can get, I mean, that information should be easy to acquire.
I mean, everybody's got a budget. Every county has a budget. We have a budget. It's 4.9 million.
I want to throw this out there, Dan, if I could. All right. The jail in Franklin County was built in 1996. It's been expanded one time. Okay. That's a revenue stream. I don't know if y'all are aware of that, but a properly maintained detention facility is revenue stream for the county, not the sheriff's office. All right. Robert Redmond, God bless him, first sheriff I ever worked for. He was the sheriff when we built the new facility in '96 on T Kemp Road, 285 T Kemp Road. He housed federal inmates because he had a huge facility, had extra bed space. That continued for many administrations up until a few years ago. I'm not going to get into the politics behind it, but for whatever reason, various reasons, the sheriff at that time called U.S. Marshals and said, I want these inmates out of my facility. It was basically some disagreement between the sheriff and the county board, keeping in mind that the revenue generated from housing federal inmates does not go to the sheriff. It goes to the county. Well, current sheriff, Sheriff White, has reinstituted that program and is now housing federal inmates again. Well, back in its peak, it was minimum of $1.7 million revenue stream annually to house those inmates. So, I mean.
We, Franklin County did have a very good federal program, and a lot of jails saw that as an opportunity and started housing inmates. Currently, I believe the Granville County facility, based on some research that Shelton did when he was here, indicated they weren't able to get enough federal inmates to support the debt. And this was under the previous sheriff, obviously. So that being the case, we made a proposal that there's also with the federal inmates, there's a certain amount of paperwork, a certain amount of exercise they have to have that's additional, and it requires additional staffing.
That's correct.
And with that being the case, it's labor intensive, and when you're short-staffed, it's very difficult to maintain federal inmates. So I believe Shelton made some proposals with some numbers that would have been profitable for Granville County and any other counties for us to house on a daily basis, and a cost that was very similar to what we're spending daily right now. And so if we could pull that stuff out and look at those numbers and see where that's at, that would be a thing to look at.
Well, I can look into that for you. Some people say I got a habit of trying to be cliche, but Mr. Brum, sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. I'm not saying I know a whole lot of people in the world, but I know quite a few. So I would try and get some projections, figures together. Clearly the facility we have would not work. We're already 21 over cap right now.
That's not an option for us right now.
Yeah. So
The other thing is, I know you alluded to the capital projects, the 400,000. How much other monies have we, over the past couple of years, has it been that we didn't spend that we allocated for capital projects?
Only thing I have is the number for fiscal year 23, but we can do some research and get that back to the board.
And that really doesn't matter at this
Yeah.
point. What matters is that we have fund balance.
Mhm.
We can go and support whatever we need to do.
Mhm.
And that's, it doesn't matter. If we decided today, we slapped the gavel and said, we're gonna build a jail and start tomorrow, it'd be 8 years.
well, but not only that, you still are left with the position of the jail we have.
And we've got to maintain that jail for the next 8 years regardless. Okay? So if we've got to spend $500,000 next week, let's do it. We've talked about it. I've been to the jail several times over several years, and we talk about doing this, talk about it, forget about it. And when we've got to quit deferring this maintenance, we've got to go ahead, just like you did the other day. You know, there was a hole in the wall, you fixed it.
Well, Dan, I will also tell you this. I don't like to sit back on my laurels. I get aggravated when I see things that I perceive as folks just not doing what they're paid to do. That gets under my skin. When the inspectors and I went out there, when the contractors and I were out there Monday, there was all these old steel doors. The old cell doors were just stacked up in the yard there, and all kinds of debris and other trash. And I literally got up with Mr. Nobles and I said, I want this stuff out of here. This is ridiculous. It looked like Sadler's scrapyard. And Wednesday, Frankie got it arranged and all that stuff's been cleaned up and gone. So I'm not one of these going to sit back and talk about it. You know, if the resources are there to get it done, I'm going to get it done. And the sheriff's going to push me to make sure I get it done.
I mean, I'm very supportive. We've got to fix it. You know, one thing, when you've got inmates in a facility that's, you know, basically in shambles, it messes with your head. People have got to have some level of dignity.
Yeah.
And if we will fix these things, it ought to make a better environment.
Yeah. Well, here again, we're a situation where the inmates have complete control of the dorm because it can't be locked down. I would reference back to the men that I told you were sleeping on the floor without a pad, with no pad, because they're basically in a pod with 30 other men, and they're one. The other inmates literally take the padding out of these poor victims' pads, so they're just laying on a plastic sheet, and they're not in a situation where they can fend these other 4 or 5 inmates off.
So what do we need to do to get, does the state have a resource that they can bring us in staffing to assist us until we can hire people?
No.
They do not.
No. Now, I talked to Chris Wood again this morning. They will do anything they can do to help us, but they can't do it for us. They had talked about the depopulation, and I was hopeful that they would be able to come up with some resources to help us find locations they can't even do that.
Well, Wake County has a facility that they shut down that's in reasonably good shape that they're not using right now.
On Hammond Road,
You said it's still open?
I think they were talking about opening it back, but I don't know if they did yet.
well, the sheriff and I are both, more specifically, the sheriff has been working very closely to try and find a facility for temporary housing of our population. I believe we're
Whether
going to
you
go.
do it, you know, it makes sense if you're gonna do it. From a financial standpoint, the difference of the 1.7 and 3.4 million, it makes sense to move everybody at one time.
Well, it certainly does.
And while you're doing that, you know, maybe you can have opportunity to train properly and do some things with some of your people that are working at the jail. And maybe hire some people.
What will happen to the staff there if we,
Myself and Madam County Manager and my staff, we're going to look at the facility Monday, and it's a state facility, but the staff will have to go with it. Even the kitchen, everybody, we will not suspend anybody, lay anybody off. The whole staff, the Vance County Detention staff, will go to that state facility. But if it goes to,
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Myself, Madam Manager, and my staff, we're going Monday at noon to look at a facility over in Granville County. It is a state facility, but the perks is that we got to furnish the staff to run it.
Where's that?
It's Polk Youth Center. They have 172 beds over there. So we're going over there and take a look and hope we can come up with an MOU and come to an agreement that they will accept all of them at one time. But we got to furnish the staff and the cooking and everything.
So,
But regarding to a county facility, like I said, no counties want to take them, and then if they did, you're gonna have to put them in 10 to 15 different counties because they only be capable of taking 10, maybe 10 at a time. They couldn't take the whole 150 or 161.
but this facility will take everyone?
They could take it, well, other than the females,
Okay.
yes. And I talked to,
Well, Pope is I used to run an education program at
Yeah.
Pope, so that's a good place to be able to take the male inmates in and everything.
and I think that he talked to Sheriff White over in Franklin County, and I talked to Sheriff Fountain yesterday, so I think we can be able to separate the 21 females we have and put those in those two counties.
Can I ask you, Dan, if you finish, I don't want to, have you finished with?
No,
I'm sorry.
But I lost my train of thought. So
I'm
go ahead.
sorry. I wanted to ask, you mentioned the 39 people that are there that Dan referred to that are for violent, been there for a long period of time. You got how many people? 160 some, 140 some?
161, I believe,
Okay,
today.
those that are there for violent crimes and stuff like that, that's a serious thing. But those toward the end, let's say the lesser ones and everything, what are they there for?
We have very few people in there just for misdemeanors only. We done a study way back when we tried to depopulate and get people out on bonds, and we went through the whole entire list, and we was able to get 5 people out of the detention center. Yes, there are a few people in there for child support, a couple of DWIs and driving while license revoked, but the majority of our people are violent offenders, drug-related charges.
Violent offenders.
Yes, sir.
Why is it during COVID, we were able to get our population down to 80 something?
Can I address that just for a quick moment? Keep in mind, this is it. This is the movement in 2 weeks. I only had involvement with this jail for 2 weeks. But I have had a meeting again with Mike Waters, Melissa Pelfrey, and I got a list of our low-level offenders. Okay, because we've got to depopulate. We've got to get below capacity. I got a list of our low-level offenders in there, and I'm working on trying to get them a bond reduction. The only problem that I'm encountering is most of them have been appointed counsel or have hired an attorney. The DA's office cannot just lower their bond with the judge. If they have counsel, counsel has to draw up a consent order for their own client to get a bond reduction. So that's going to entail a lot of legwork on both my part, the district attorney's part, John Davis, district court judge, and the bar. But we are working to get the low-level offenders out. We've got a man in there, I think as of Monday, been in there 88 days for driving while license revoked.
Because I wanted to say, the low-level offenders, I know this might be silly in terms of asking, the low-level offenders, get them out, put them house monitor on, and send them back to let the family take care of them.
Well, and I agree. If this fellow, this particular individual, because I went in there and spoke to the inmate population, had he went to district court and pled guilty to his DWLR, he would not have got an active sentence. He'd have got a fine and cost of court. But he can't make his bond. So he's already served well in excess of any active sentence that any district court judge would have gave him. And he's still sitting there because he can't make bond.
And we've had those conversations with Charity with dealing with our stepping up those programs, that there are inmates in there that have been in jail longer than what sentence they would get.
And a part of that bond process is, Ms. Kelly, if Commissioner Brumman had a charge and was out on bond, and if he caught another charge, he's denied the second bond. So therefore, they're in jail on low-level charges and cannot get a bond.
And allow me to add this to that same. Some of the low-level offenders, I've got a fellow that stole. Now, he's clearly got some mental problems. Okay, I'm not a doctor, but he's got some issues. He's in there for stealing, I think, a flower pot or something off a woman's front porch. I went and spoke to the ADA assigned to his case. I said, look, when we get this guy out of the jail, they looked the case up, well, it's a victim crime. Well, we've got something in North Carolina now called victims' rights. The district attorney cannot move for a bond reduction on a victim crime unless the victim is notified. So in my presence, they got on the phone, they called the victim. The guy's been here over 30 days. You mind, he's not a danger to society. Do you have any problem with a bond reduction? I don't want his bond lowered. That's the end of it. So, but we're trying, but if it's a victim crime, the victim has to be consulted before any bond movement can be.
Who didn't want his bond lowered?
The victim in the case
Did
not want his bond reduced.
he didn't want to get out.
No,
Yeah.
the victim,
The victim.
The victim,
not the suspect, the
the
victim.
person was stolen from.
Victim, okay, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Commissioner Brumman, the answer to your question is regarding to COVID. Law enforcement was less proactive in knocking on doors and going to people's houses and making those physical arrests during COVID for officer safety. So the number dropped in the population at the detention center.
And then also there were different alternatives to bonding, like Mr. Kelly was just talking about
Yes.
with electronic house arrest and those kind of things. Those should be viable options. Now going to the long-term solution. You mentioned 4 different scenarios, one of them being doing nothing. The other scenario, and it's been talked about for years, is a regional jail. And I think at some point, we need to continue the conversation with some of our close by counties to see about doing some of those things. I know I've had conversations with some of the commissioners from those counties. They've been generally supportive of it. I think there were some transitional issues in one of the counties. And during that time, they said they wanted to put it on hold, but we need to go back and see what might be a good time frame to restart those issues. We can do a regional facility quicker than we can build a new jail.
The sheriff of Graham County is in favor of it. Sheriff in Warren County is not because his population is only 45 people. Halifax County, they're giving it to build a new facility, and Franklin County is okay. So in the state of North Carolina, there are 2 regional facilities. One is a 3-county facility, and another was a 2-county facility, and it worked well in maneuvering and getting the inmates back and forth to courts in different counties. Me personally, I'm in favor of a regional detention center.
Well, the Granville facility, again, if you look at the numbers and their budgeting, they're currently having some cash flow issues on that jail because they don't have enough inmates in there to make it work. And so that being the case, it may be a good time to have some conversation with them. And that's a conversation that commissioners need to have with commissioners.
I agree.
And there needs to be some support. If you've got the support of the jail, then we maybe need to have some dialogue with the commissioners in Granville County and see if that's something that can move forward.
And we need to do it quickly because you've been in conversation with Graham County for a long time. And we've been back and forth about regional,
I actually had the conversation with Granville County right before they broke ground on the new jail. And at that time, they didn't want to change the plans, but the jail was built with mainframes on the end of the pods. So if they needed to expand the jail, then there could be it's relatively inexpensive to expand the jail. You just lengthen the pods. They've got mainframes on the end. You just make the pod longer.
I just want to let the county know, I know it's two components and for that to happen is the Board of Commissioners had to agree and also the sheriff, willing to give it up. And just want to let the commission know the sheriff of Vance County is willing to give up the detention center here in Vance County to have a regional facility in
But
Granville.
what would that look like with this county, with you? What would that look like? A regional, even though
So it could work they're short-staffed currently in Granville County also.
the staff
Yes.
go there?
So staff could be
Be transitioned over.
hired, be transitioned over to
Uh,
that jail.
The sheriff here in the county that don't have a detention center will still have to maintain a transportation staff only
Mhm.
to maneuver back and forth to court.
And the other thing is you've got the availability now of electronic, except for, I think, capital cases,
The
right?
cases are mandatory to be in court. We're doing a lot of video conferencing from court to the detention center.
But so a lot of it can be video conference now, so your transportation cost isn't what it would have been 3 or 4 years ago.
But it really need to be looked into quickly, because
Well,
like I
I'd
said,
be
it's been
willing
a
to look
long
into the
conversation.
discussion in terms of regional jail. And I do that from a standpoint of having been employed by Vance Graham Community College, which is regional, which includes Ward County. But it started out as Vance and Granville together to form a community college, and it can work. It can work.
Do you have something, Mr. Green?
So I worked for Elizabeth City for a little bit. They have a regional jail there in Pasquotank County. And I know with them, it's commissioners serve on the board, but they do all the hiring themselves. So it's actually independent from each county.
Right.
So they would do all the
hire
hiring
jail,
and take care of all that stuff
And
themselves.
we would have either some capital arrangement, or
Correct.
some per diem arrangement, or whatever that we would structure, and we'd do that in coordination with the county.
Yep. So we would take our hands off and they will actually manage the whole detention center themselves.
And so just as another thought, when I first came in this position, November 2023, I spoke to Drew at that time about a regional jail. And at that time, his board was not interested at that time, but I can definitely have that conversation with County Manager Cummings as well. I can talk to Drew.
Yeah.
Just to see if there's
I've
interest there.
spoken recently with some of the commissioners, and they're okay with having a conversation. Says probably not gonna happen tomorrow, but as a long-term thing, we can have some conversation.
You know, it might not happen.
If we had a
tomorrow.
conversation, but at the same time, be able to show that it's a win-win for both counties.
Mhm.
I think that would be a plus, because then they benefit as well as we benefit from it.
The other thing is, you mentioned you've walked through with several contractors. Are they all looking at the same specs?
Yeah, the two contractors that I met with Monday, we did it collectively, all three of us at the same time. And they've all got the access to the same information.
So we have an RFP or formal document that they're bidding off of?
Nothing at this time.
Waiting for board direction to see, we're waiting for board direction. We'll bring that back to you all on Monday night to see after these conversations, what direction we want to go in, but, that the board wants to go in. But I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
For you. So, a lot of work was done back in 2022, 2023 to do research on building a jail, renovating the current space, things of that nature from Mosley Architects. Did you have access to that information? Okay.
I do.
You do, I know you do. So when I look at this information that's in the packets, so in 2023, Mosley Architects estimated $5.3 million for repairs to the existing jail, to actually expand the existing jail and add 94 beds. It was a little over 31 million, and building was right at 42 million. So I guess when I'm thinking about a budgetary and what the ask will be from the commissioners on Monday, when you think about renovation, well, I guess we can just get direction to move forward with an RP process on Monday. I think that's what we'll do. I'm just thinking about your estimate was 1.7 million, but Mosley's architect was 5.3 million. So that's the only concern that I have, the numbers, the difference in the numbers.
I can probably clarify why there's such a large discrepancy
Okay.
between the two numbers.
Okay.
The estimate that was given, and when I say two contractors, they work for the same company. Okay. So it would really be coming in as one estimate. That does not include the cost of new equipment. That is just the repairs.
Okay.
And that includes, sanitizing, painting the walls, basically doing everything that is in this punch-out list other than the new roof.
I wouldn't be surprised to see a $3 or $4 million bill.
Mhm. Right.
And I was provided this morning from a personal friend, I'll leave it at that, the contact information for 2 other contractors here again that do this type of work. So depending on what the pleasure of the board turns out to be Monday, I can reach out to them. Certainly anybody else that you folks may know that would want to look at this project.
The other part is when we do the RFP, if we choose to do that, that we need to make sure that the warranty and the installation guidelines are maintained. Job they did on those doors was not satisfactory at all.
Yeah.
And so that's something that needs to be done. And, you know, I can go down anytime, walk back through you, just so you're familiar with some of the things we identified before, where they're hiding the shanks, where they're getting the shanks from, where they're hiding the phones, all those things. We can go through and do that. Be happy to walk through it with you because we've been through there, in the kitchen, I'm guessing they're still not using the exhaust fan in there because I'm hearing that we've got problems with the heating unit in there because it's got grease up in it.
Well, I think the exhaust system, the captive air unit is working, I believe. I think it was when I went Monday. But looks like mold growing on the ceiling tiles over
That's
food.
because they're not
preparators.
using the exhaust fan. It's loud. And they don't use it because they don't like it loud. They like to talk while they're cooking. So they turn it off.
Sound like need to go to safe serve class.
And that's it. And that, that's something that, because they do it that way, that's why you've got mold on the ceilings. That's why when the heat or air comes on, the return has got grease running 4 feet up into the duct. Because that's basically becoming your exhaust. And then that in turn tears up a unit, of which we put all new units on that building 2-3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Based on the problem he just indicated, when they decide they don't know who's supervising them in terms of telling them
That need to be on your.
who's supervising that crew, the cooking crew, in terms of if this is the proper way in which to run the kitchen, and you hearing this is out in the public, then how come that has not been addressed within the kitchen crew?
I would contribute it to lack of staffing, sir, but it should be a captain for each division within the detention center, a captain or a lieutenant, but a lot of that comes from lack. I mean, when you got very few people running around trying to do everything, a lack of staffing it contributes to a lot of the problem, the issues that we have at the detention center.
How many
Just simply tell them to turn it on.
Ma'am,
Simply or said.
myself and Commissioner Brumman, we were there and we told them that. I mean, just like, yeah.
Now, when I go into the jail, if I walk into the kitchen, somebody hits the button.
I mean,
That's just.
What's your
I
vacancy?
understand what you said, Madam Chair, but just like, it's just be standing over telling a 6-year-old, don't pick that up, don't pick that up, don't pick it up. And we just don't have the manpower.
What it says is you're gonna be replaced, which is called, they let them know if you're not doing your job, it's called, replacing you.
It's easier said than done when you already at the poor staffing that we have.
Somebody out there will
Yeah.
switch, will flip the script,
That's it. And then, like I said, you spoke earlier, at some point, we need to talk about jail security, but that probably needs to be done on a closed session.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm glad you brought that up because keep in mind, I've had no involvement. I don't know what's been going on over there. You know, I drop folks off and I go about my merry way. But I'll leave it at this. If I had my druthers, you'd be in a big, big bind right now because you wouldn't have many COs working. But
Understand?
we have 7 COs working. We still have 20 vacancies. Now, I volunteered 2 weeks ago to start processing applications for the facility because clearly we've got applicants, they're just not getting processed fast enough. The first 2 I did, one of them was a absolutely not, and the other one I had aspirations for. The criminal history was half-inch thick.
So, and when is our new,
NeoGov, they
NeoGov.
signed the final contract after the county attorney's review yesterday. So the contract is effective 2/1/2025, hopefully implementation by March 1st, April 1st, hoping to go live by April 1st. It's going to be a process, but we just signed the contract and got the final contract yesterday.
And we found that to be
Mhm.
cases in some of the other departments hiring people.
Mhm.
The applications just never make it to you with the system we're using now.
Well, I am getting the applications and I am going through them as I get them. There again, there's some things that I would love to talk to y'all outside of the public ear and you would see a different side of what we're dealing with.
Madam Chair, do we have consensus that we'd like to move forward with an RFP to discuss on Monday?
It's Monday, yes.
Okay.
The what?
We have consensus that we'd like to move forward with an RFP to vote on Monday.
Monday, yes.
Okay,
Is that,
Because you all straight with that?
okay, all right.
thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you for your
Yes,
time.
sir.
That's what you'd like to see us do?
Yes, sir.
All right, so now we go EMS fireman.
I need a 2-minute break. The next is,
Yeah, it's overtime. We're
yes,
behind a little bit.
yes, emergency services, yes.
Yeah,
Can we get a 3-minute break, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes.
3-minute break.
Let them move people out.
Mhm.
They're gonna go Monday and look at you.
You can send it to you.
You can't paint a gas line yellow. Sand it down and paint.
You can't get some doors out, that you did in one day. I've been talking about it.
6 months.
You're right.
You're not spending money here. Right over there, we're not spending money. We're spending capital. But the- Yeah, we're spending, we're gonna spend.
Okay, either way.
We still got your staff.
But
You got all-
I want to. Started, let's put it in. Prison closure, don't we do it along?
I've talked to 2 or 3 commissioners, and they're all.
Okay, who you spoke with? Cause yesterday.
Spoke to.
Which is there. Who's Jay? They got a new one on. That's like- I don't know. Never know that I was.
To me, that doesn't sound like they do.
So why would the commission, I mean, why would they have so much?
See what the numbers are. The numbers are 20 or 30 million dollars. Yeah.
Just like she might.
Oh, yeah.
Revenues don't come back to the sheriff's office. Sheriff.
So then if we do a regional, what becomes the sheriff? He's still part of that.
He's just the sheriff. And then he would be responsible.
That's part, okay.
And it has.
That can be done.
That can be done.
Understand what his position is.
They can just gather
And so the staff members won't report.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, so he pretty much, he would just have a sheriff. Okay.
Yeah.
Like you said, it can be done in 2 years.
That's why I said we need to move that.
Okay, so like separate finance department area.
Yeah.
So Granville would have to go that direction too. They would have to agree to, okay.
We gave them.
I said, that's not gonna
That on that hard out.
If we had cars on this.
But I like what
Oh.
this guy Richard talking about. I enjoy listening to
Oh,
him.
yeah.
He's retired.
He was 27 years.
How do we get it? How do you?
Hawkins was, he's the one who resigned, stays as long. Hawkins came from the prison system.
They said people in Durham, so they going to.
This guy seems like a person.
We ready? All right, we're back in session. Still gonna turn it over to you.
Where the agenda? Yes, I gotta get back to my agenda. Okay, so now next we'll have a presentation from Assistant County Manager Jeremy Jones, as well as some of the public safety staff as it relates to EMS and or fire or emergency services complex.
Commissioners, a commissioner did ask us to explore potentially getting an emergency services complex as it relates to EMS fire main. And you can see up here, who will that entail? Fire EMS communication / emergency management and the fire marshal's offices. And of course, there's some points that we have as to relates to why we are in agreement with possibly moving forward towards an emergency services complex. Of course, the bullet point 1 says improved coordination and faster response. Or centralizing everything, we'll be able to communicate and quicker deployment of resources across all of our emergency services departments. And I have with me our emergency services directors. Want to come and speak on the other points, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
So as our next point is cost savings. Shared facility reduces operational costs, including utilities, maintenance, and administrative overhead, maximizing taxpayer dollars operating out of the same entity. Can't hear me? Okay, I'm sorry. As I said before, the shared facility reduces operational costs, including utilities, maintenance, and administrative overhead, maximizing taxpayer dollars operating out of the same entity. The other part that can go also along with that is when it comes down to like training space and this, that, and the other, all that can be shared space versus everybody, all spread out all over the place. So we think that would be a good savings for us if we do move in that direction.
Good morning, everybody. I wanted to speak on the enhanced public safety with the integrated services to ensure a more effective and cohesive response to emergencies and community safety needs. I believe in having integrated services will improve public safety responses by minimizing delays and optimizing resource allocations. By integrating agencies, I believe that this will help in facilitating problem solving, determining the need and the requirements of the response, and foster coordination efforts between, during, and after events. As you all know, 911 and emergency management has been 2 separate entities under one roof for over 2 decades, so possibly about 1994. I believe by having a joint unified location, this will allow for centralized command locations should a disaster occur.
To speak on your joint training opportunities, easy and more frequent joint training exercises, having one central location for public safety to meet and gather, to train fire, EMS, emergency management, 911, without having to go to the city fire department for EMS Con Ed or Vance Community College for EMS Con Ed or fire training. It leaves everybody in the central district, in their response district. Also, with the expansion, will give us the ability to maybe allow to construct a training facility that is much needed in this county. Because it would not only benefit one department, it would benefit every department, fire, EMS, rescue squad, without having to go 40 minutes to Bund or 45 minutes to La Crosse, Virginia, an hour and a half to Sanford. 30 minutes to Stovall. These are some of the closest facilities that we utilize for training for the system with our ISO training hours. So having this safety complex, public safety complex will enhance training needs and allow people to stay within their primary districts for improved response.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, distinguished members of county government. Speaking on the last bullet, flexibility for future growth. A unified complex provides room for expansion, adapting to the county's evolving emergency services need over time and the county's preparation for growth. So a few things we can look at regarding this complex. Number one, adequate housing of current and future staffing levels and the adequate housing of an increase in not only the size of each department's fleet, but also an increase in the manufacturing sizes of those vehicles for each department too. When we look at the current staffing levels, back in 1960, when Vance County Fire and EMS was formed, there were 5 personnel. Currently in 2025, we have 13 personnel, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, 11 personnel, 24/7, 365. The current building now houses 2 separate departments. Again, was built in 1960. 5 personnel, 2 ambulances, an old hearse, 3 fire trucks. The original size was 68 feet by 66 feet. Bays were 38 feet deep, and our doors 10 feet by 14 feet. 1989, a 26 by 66 addition was added to house up to 6 van-type ambulances, which is currently unable to accommodate any of the current sized ambulances Vance County EMS has. Looking forward at the possible increase in fleet sizes with the current trend of larger vehicle sizes and specifications, individually designed and built facilities can alleviate the sizing problems that we're currently faced with. Number 2, if we look back over the individual departments' call volumes and run statistics, there's been a noticeable increase annually with the trend showing the need for future expansion and growth in staffing, and also the number of apparatus that we put on the road. I know in my 20-plus years with Vance County, I've seen a call volume double for both fire and EMS. These numbers support the need for growth in both staffing and equipment, and not just projected growth in 5 years or 10 years, but growth looking forward 30 years, 40 years, and further into the future. Lastly, number 3, specifically designing and building an emergency services complex where each individual department is housed separately will help this county as we look ahead to prepare for both a population and commercial growth increase. Looking back in 1960 to current, Vance County has had a 29.1% growth in population. Franklin County in the last 50 years, 176.3% growth. And if we know going up US 1, that growth is coming this way. It's coming up US 1. Wake Forest has gone into Youngsville into Franklinton. It's just a matter of time before it comes across the river into Vance County. So as we look at the trend for the last 40 years, it's foreseeable that in the not too distant future, we'll be seeing the growth spill over out of Franklin County area into Vance County area, thereby increasing the volume of emergency calls for service and the need for this county to be prepared. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Do you all estimate, can you estimate the savings that may, if we put both facilities together? Do you have the estimated what it would save or cost? Okay, I'm just wondering the savings that by buying it, because I know it's 2 separate entities. And I know it would save us a lot of money.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we haven't gotten that far yet. We haven't gotten that far yet.
A lot of this centralized thing, we've recently given instruction to our attorney to close on a piece of property so that we can have an ambulance station in the northern part of the county. The centralized thing is good, but that doesn't get the services to our people. We're in the business of getting services to our people, most of them in an emergency situation, and we need to be there as quickly as we can. Creating a centralized facility does not support that. Additionally, we're spending money. I'm guessing you're talking $10 or $12 million for such a facility that are taxpayer dollars. The current facility we have, is overgrown with, just like you spoke about, BB, with the size of the vehicles and so forth. So we do need to do something on that, but I do not believe we need a huge central facility. I believe we need to continue on our path of working towards more facilities that, you alluded to growth in the southern part of the county. As that occurs, we need to be able to be flexible and develop as those things occur. I think in the long term, we want to make sure that all the citizens in the county have similar services. And I think that's been our goal for a while now, and we need to continue on that. And I think building a central facility, we talked, I think we had conversations with the city at one time about maybe doing an EMS station and having a more centralized place where you had office space and so forth with that, but working together on that from an administrative standpoint and having administrative facilities. But I can't get my handle on trying to build a huge complex to centralize the services. And as long as our county is, everybody trying to come from one spot. We need to locate those facilities north, south, and in the central part of the county.
Mr. Brummett indicated that. I'm one in terms of goals. I sort of like the idea of finding the right spot as we grow in terms of county, in that the services you can access services from a central spot. Because I shared with the county managers, one of the things I sort of like to see is what you just referred to, I call it a campus. And in that campus, you have these particular aspects that can respond. And if it's located in the right space, I think Harvey has always said that the response time is probably very quickly if it's centrally located. So I don't have a problem with us discussing a centralized place. At the same time, I don't have a problem with what Mr. Brummett said in terms of looking at having things located at a key spot and looking at key spots, key places in the community that we could have an EMS station, we could have a fire department that responds to the needs of people. It may not necessarily be a campus like what I really would like to see, but I'm open to both discussions.
Yes, I think it's an open discussion, but as well, what would it make it look like for the northern substation we're trying to build? If we combine it, because I know the EMS we need to find something to get them.
So I think what this is about is, of course, still having our substations, but yet just having a centralized place where all of our offices can be, communications actually can alleviate space for the sheriff's office and communications. So we're looking at moving all of our emergency services as relates to directors or department heads to a centralized spot as relates to our fire department, EMS, and sharing the same complex. So I still want to be able to have resource throughout the county, but having a centralized place to have all of our, of course, trainings and things of that sort, all of our needs at one centralized spot. Because right now we have people all over the place. Fire marshal's office over here, and EMS is here, and 911 here, but yet having everybody at the same location, achieving the same goal.
And so it would pretty much replace the conversations back from 2023 when you all were looking at the Dollar General land for the EMS main station. So just including the other departments as well. So we were just looking for direction on if you want to continue the conversations with the EMS main station or do an inclusive station.
Correct.
That was, yeah.
I'm looking for discussion as a board.
I mean, maybe spoke about population. I'm in my 19th year as a commissioner. The population in this county now is less than it was when I started 19 years ago. USDA projections project us to decrease in population by about 1% over the next 30 years. So those things aren't. So what it happens to what I feel is we're growing government. And we're trying to grow government. We need to be more efficient in our delivery of services so that we can do the things that we need to do and not spend so much money. We've been through the past 6 months with our citizens speaking before us about the tax increases and those things. And we've got people that are hurting now. We've got to take into consideration what's going on with our citizens, and we've got to take care of them and make sure that they can actually afford to live in this county. And by growing government and spending money that we don't need to spend, the 911 center, we have that, and we have a backup center. They work, function just fine. When we have an emergency, there's a conference room at the 911 center currently. And meetings I've been to at that, when we had emergencies, there was room for everybody to be there. We can centralize command and do those things. We don't need, in my opinion, these state-of-the-art facilities that are just big government spends, and then the overhead of operating those facilities, it doesn't make sense to me.
I hear you, Dan, but I'm gonna take a different approach to you all in terms of that. I hear the thing that says that the population says that we're not growing, we're decreasing in terms of population. My investigation in terms of looking at things that are going on, I was at a foundation recent for a meeting for the community college. And this area has been a tier 1 county for 30 years. For 30 years, and it doesn't look like it's going to change. And I think that's one of the things that adds to the decrease in population. But if we do things that are going to be visible in terms of community, then this area is going to grow. I think in terms of what's happening in Franklin County, that it's going to spill. I think Mr. Mitchell mentioned whenever we can get water and sewer across the Tar River, that this area is going to grow. So I take issue with the folks that say we are going to decrease in population. And the reason we are a tier 1 county in terms of commissioners is because of poverty. And you've got to, in terms of getting some people in this community, in terms of rooftops and things that are going to contribute and everything. Warren County vacillates between a tier 1 and a tier 2 because of the lake population and everything up there in terms of development. Granville County is a tier 2. We are tier 1 for 30 years, and it's based on poverty, educational level of this community. And we've got, in terms of growing government, we got to do something to grow the community, grow rooftop, get people to come and live here and everything. Take a ride into Franklin, look what they did to their downtown Franklin, which is, you can't find a parking space when you come to Franklin in the evenings and stuff like that. So I want to say, because I'm from here, Dan, so you've been on for 19 years. I want to say, let's look forward and say, there's a way in which to grow this community, but you grow it by doing things that make you look good to the outside. And at the same time, I agree with you, Dan, in terms of hurting, because I'm hurting too, in terms of taxes. So I'd like us to discuss it. I'd like for it to be a discussion. Okay.
And just to respond to, so Granville is now tier 3, but they're doing things to bring industry to their county, but they've just moved to tier 3.
Just moved to tier 3.
2025, yes, sir.
Thank you.
I realize both sides do make valuable points, and we do have to take in consideration what's going on with our citizens and make sure that they're in a place that they enjoy being and livable. But I would as well, we got 3 commissioners that we still is absent, don't have here. But I would like to continue discussion so we can really get a big picture, input from everybody.
Okay.
That's what I feel.
No, so we can do that, I guess, during our budget conversations.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for the presentation.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And so the next item in your presentation is EMS substation. So I won't take too much time on this, but I think there were some concerns with the piece of property that we are currently in due diligence on in the northern part of the county. And I think, Mr. Kelly, you went and walked that land and you had some concerns with that land, and staff went as well.
We went out and walked the land and everything, and I'd like to look, there was another piece of land that was brought to my attention that across the street that I think we ought to look at and we should discuss. And I realized that it's a small piece of land, but at the same time, I mentioned that Frank and I walked it, and the drop that I don't like and everything in terms, I have a house, and I say in terms of the commissioners, my house was built on a piece of land similar to that. When I cleared the trees and everything, and look, I now have a walkout basement and everything. So I think the fall and the drop is just, I'd like to investigate the other piece of land that we looked at. I think Commissioner Hester mentioned everything. I think that it's a good deal. It's a good deal in terms of looking at, in terms of the substation. I think that for Javier, in terms of folks that it may have future potential and everything, as that area out there, as your area grows, Carol, and everything, as you grow out there and everything, what is it, for a helicopter pad and different kinds of things that may one day be viable. So again, I'd like for us to discuss it. I don't know where,
So what I'm here, have you all been in conversation with the other,
well,
have you been in conversation with the other, piece of land that you all keep
yeah,
referring
there's
to?
been some,
Frankie.
there's
With
been
the
some
person?
discussion. Yeah,
Frankie can speak to it.
And
And
is another person is up for want to sell? I mean,
it's beautiful, Carol. It's
Yeah, I've seen both pieces of property.
I have reached out to the other piece of property Mr. Kelly is speaking about. There's a total of 6 acres and they want $50,000 for the 6 acres. There was a house there at one time, so we know it will perk. It had a septic tank there. The owners are willing to sell.
mhm,
and it's all flat.
across the
You know,
street.
Mhm.
The house was, I know exactly what you're talking
Mm.
about. He's trying
Right
to say,
across from the Simmons,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's
It's a
your
house
area.
there and the
Yeah.
house burned
Uh-huh.
and they
Yep.
tore it down.
Yep.
The owner is, trying to think of her name. Can't think of it.
Well, I just didn't mention it because I'm.
Well,
not
yeah,
yeah.
right
I
now.
know I can't mention name, but, I know what you're talking about. And
So
I know it's a flat.
it is.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I think the concern with the other piece of property is the slope. Yeah, we went and walked the property
Right.
What
together.
happened to the vote of moving forward? I mean, what, we can,
So you all did vote to move forward,
Mhm.
but Mr. Kelly and Mr. Hester just raised concerns. So I just wanted.
well,
that
I'm
re-
just saying, so
Well, we've already voted and we've instructed the attorney at this point to move forward. I'm not opposed to looking at it,
Yeah.
but whatever we do, we need to do quickly.
quickly, yeah.
Yeah, I've already talked to Jonathan and we can actually do a 30-day extension
And
for
I'd
the
like
due
more
diligence
information
period.
on the property so I can go look at it.
Absolutely.
Me as well. I mean,
Yeah,
you
and we'll-
searching it.
I'd like more information on that property so we can go and look at
I don't have a
it.
problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. I'd like we look at it.
And I can have you some information Monday night.
Yeah.
If you want. And I'm willing to take anybody out to see it.
Mm.
The owners give us permission to go at any time we want.
Please go look at it.
Yeah, and
I know
so,
exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
yeah, and so Monday night, I'll ask you all to approve the 30-day extension of the due diligence period. I'll make sure I add that up on the county manager's report.
But
So
we've
y'all-
already taken action, so we need to do something with that.
Yeah, mhm,
because
yeah.
we've taken action.
I've talked to Jonathan about it, and we can just extend the 30 days. We don't have to purchase it. We can actually extend the 30-day extension period, due diligence period. I've talked to him about it.
And the only thing that the owner of the property that we're looking at, had called me and just kind of requested about 4.5 acres of it is some woods. And they would like to cut the trees down before they sell it.
Mhm.
But I mean, $50,000 for 6 acres, it's a good deal. And it all is flat.
How much was the other?
2 acres.
Two,
Little
I'm
2
sorry.
acres, another side.
the other property was
Like 1.92.
2 acres, not 2 acres.
Yeah, right at 2 acres. Mhm.
And this is, you are on the road,
Yeah.
just on the road.
Yeah.
On 39.
Mhm.
The other's on 39 too, but it's
Yeah.
much smaller.
yeah.
I would say the other piece is shovel ready. That's what I would say.
Shovel
I would
ready.
say it's shovel
It's
ready.
shovel ready.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
anybody that wants to see it before we go in further discussion, please let me know. I'll be more than glad to take you there.
Thank you,
Thanks, Frankie.
thank you.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is Commissioners Meeting Room, audio and visual upgrades, and we'll have our IT Director, Randall Metlin, come and speak to that just a little bit.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
What I've got in front of County Manager Perry right now is a suggestion on some changes to this room to help with our public streaming of the meetings. Right now, I don't know if y'all have actually watched any of our YouTube streams. The audio is okay. The video is very poor. You can't really, if you don't know who's sitting in each seat, you wouldn't be able to recognize them. What we're discussing is going to a higher quality 2-camera system, having a center mounted camera up here viewing the commissioners, having another camera over there viewing the speaker, the public, and the presentations. and putting an actual control center in the back so we can do better streaming, control everything a little bit better and do everything in a better quality. We're looking at doing all the work internally in-house, trying to save some money. And the current estimate is right around $11,000. You have any questions about the proposed system?
And that's just for technology system.
Yes.
What type of sound system are you proposing?
We're going to keep the current sound system. We're just going to put in a sound mix board so we can control each individual channel separately. Right now, we can only turn up or turn down all of the microphones together. We can't control individual volumes.
I mean, if I sit back here like this, would we have the ability to, for that?
We'd have the ability to increase the gain on your microphone without affecting everybody else's. We cannot do that right now.
That seems to be the main issue right now, is that these things just, some commissioners sit back and some commissioners sit forward.
Yep, and right now we have to balance everything all together.
Okay.
So that'll give us individual channel balance.
The other part is, we had an incident in the past few months where we had somebody with accessibility needs, and they were unable we weren't able to get them a microphone. If there's
I
a way
am
to have a
planning on
remote
adding
microphone.
an additional channel and adding it installed on that side, just in case we have accessibility options. Also for the next ENR meetings, when you have both two people up here talking at the same time. So I want a similar microphone set up over there, not necessarily established all of the time, but as needed. But that is included in this.
That is included. Okay.
Yes.
We need to get a consensus. Everybody all right with that? All right.
That's something we definitely
We
need.
need,
One thing, we've got a lot of people now watching the meetings,
Mhm.
and
Our average streams have gone up since I've been here. We used to have about 6 to 7 people watching the streams each day. Now we have between 20 and 30 minimum.
Mhm.
so it's a good resource for the people to be involved with the government, and anything we can do to support that. To me, that amount is something that would be well worth it.
Yeah.
Well, we will move forward with that plan and have it in the final budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Randall.
To the meeting and not coming to the meeting, being able to participate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to change up just a little bit. I do want to invite Ted Cole. Ted, can you go ahead and do your presentation before we talk about your tax rate and your tax rate history? We've been engaged with Davenport Financial Advisors since 2015. Is it 2015 or so?
I think it may go back even a little
Mhm.
earlier than that.
Okay. And so he has a presentation to you all as it relates to capital projects and current tax rates and things of that nature in our finances. Thank you,
Okay,
Ted.
great. Okay, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I believe that you all have a hard copy of this in your agenda packets.
They do.
And there are page numbers in the bottom right corner. And what's on the screen now is exactly what the commissioners, what you all have in front of you. I think you want me to move that. Okay. We're not looking for any decisions today, but trying to give you some information. I'll give you all a chance to get caught up with where it is in your
You got
book.
it?
Everybody have it?
Y'all got it? Y'all got it? Okay.
We good?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Not looking for any decisions today, but trying to lay the groundwork on debt and capital for the most part, right? You've heard a lot this morning about potential capital projects, and we're here to talk about how you might be able to fund capital projects going forward. And we're going to talk a lot about debt. I'm not here to advocate to go and issue debt, but we want to make sure you've got good perspective as you're thinking about all of these projects. What is our ability to fund those projects, whether it's with cash or debt or some combination. So happy to entertain questions as we go. And I'll just go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to talk a little bit about credit ratings, your bond ratings. If you ever needed to go and borrow money, that could be an important factor. Couple of slides on fund balance. And then really most of the conversation is going to be about your existing debt, where it stands today, and then start to give you some perspective on what your ability might be to fund capital projects going forward. Several things in the appendix that I don't plan to go through, but it has all the detail of your debt. If you care to look at it, each piece of debt, what it was issued for, when, the supporting detail of the cases I'm going to explain, as well as your financial policies. So, little bit about bond ratings. And keep in mind, if you were to go to USDA and borrow money, you don't need a bond rating. If you were going to go to a bank and borrow money, you don't need a bond rating. It's only necessary if the way you want to go and borrow money, you go to the actual bond market. And that may or may not be in your future. You all had been rated by both Moody's and Standard & Poor's. Those are the two rating agencies that most local governments use. And you can see in the gold boxes there on the left, you were what we call a AA county, AA3, AA minus, and you got 3 notches that you would have gone up to get to that highest level rating of AAA. You're not currently rated, not because anything happened to your financial standing, but because the bonds that were rated matured and retired. And when the bonds go away, the rating goes away. So that's pretty typical. On the right-hand side, we subscribe to a database that Moody's maintains. And so you're going to see some slides where we do some comparisons of you all to other rated counties, either across the country or within North Carolina. And so as an example on the right, North Carolina, we call it credits, that's counties. On the right-hand side, you'll see in that bottom box who the AAA, AA, and single A counties are in North Carolina. There's about 57 counties that are rated by Moody's, so clearly a number of counties that don't have a rating, and that's not because they're not creditworthy, just because they haven't needed a rating. So not to say you need to reestablish the rating, but it may be something in your future depending on what y'all decide to do about capital projects and how you want to fund those projects. Real quickly on how the rating agencies rate local governments, and I'm going to talk off of that upper left box. This is Moody's. It's their methodology. They start with a lot of data. So they're looking at audits, budgets, and census data, and they assign a weighting, and you'll see for the economy, what we're capturing there is your tax base, your assessed value, your economic output as a county and as a region or an MSA, and certain wealth levels. That's worth 30% of the rating. And those aren't things that you all can control in the short term. You just can't budget a higher tax base or create jobs because you want to. That's a longer term effort to create a community where people want to come and invest and what have you. So that's 30% of the rating. The next 30% is financial performance. So that is how you budget, how you perform relative to your budget, and for example, how you manage your reserve levels. And I will tell you, you'll see it in a moment, you have managed those finances very well as a county. That's 30% of the rating. And y'all do have a little more control over that, right? Budget to budget. Institutional framework, that references just the fact that you're a North Carolina county, and the rating agencies look at North Carolina local government as a strong model. You have a lot of flexibility as a local government that you might not have if you were a county, say in Illinois or somewhere else where you don't have quite as much control over your budgets. And then lastly, 30% goes to leverage. So that's actual debt that you have or might issue, your pension obligations, and your post-employment benefits for retirees. So it's debt and debt-like. So that's the last I'm going to talk about the rating agencies. But a lot of times people think that's all about debt, and debt is an important part of the bond rating, but they look at a number of other things in establishing a credit score for the county. Okay? All right, couple of, let's see. Yeah, 2 slides on fund balance. This is slide number 7. The top graph is looking at revenues versus expenditures in the general fund. So the gold line are your revenues. The bar is your operating expenses and debt service. And in every year over the 6-year period, revenues have outperformed the expenses. Obviously a good thing. That means you're structurally balanced, right? You're covering all of your operating expenses from current year revenues. And as a result, in the graph directly below it, your fund balances have been growing. And fund balances, if you go back to the audit, right, there's different categories of fund balance according to accounting practices. The dark green portion of that bottom graph is what we call the unassigned fund balance. And that is the component of your fund balance over which you all have the most control, the least amount of restrictions, and it is the portion of your fund balance that is tied to your policy. So you're structurally balanced and have been for a number of years. And as a result of that, you've been able to grow reserves. All of that is very positive from where we stand. It's positive from where the rating agencies or lenders would stand. And I think if you decide to move forward with a funding plan for projects, whatever it might be, it is positioning you well to be able to access capital if you need it. Dig in a little bit on your policy. There's a lot going on in this chart, but if you look at the upper left, you have a policy that says that unassigned fund balance, that part of the fund balance that has the least amount of restrictions, the dark green bar on the prior page, you want that to be at a minimum of 15% of your budget, with a target to be at 25. So the red line is the minimum. That's 15% of the budget. We're looking at a 6-year trend, fiscal 19 through 24. And by the way, the 24 numbers in here are not final audit, they're draft, but I think we feel pretty good about these numbers, but it technically hasn't been presented, I guess, to y'all. So the red line is the minimum 15, the blue dotted line is your target of 25. And what you'll see with that dark green line is you have operated at a higher level than the lighter blue line, right? So you have managed to your fund balance policy and then some. And you can see in recent years, particularly in fiscal 24, it looks like you've widened the gap. That green line going higher to the right is a positive, right? It's more fund balance being added to your general fund, and it's growing at a faster clip than what your budget has grown. You compare very well to other rated communities. That's the bottom left. I won't get into too much detail on that. The point is you've managed fund balances very well. The right-hand side of this page is important because it's going to flow through our next section. And what we're establishing here is just an idea, just a concept at this point that says you have an unassigned fund balance that is higher than your policy, right? 25% is your target. You are at almost, let's call it 50%. So what you're seeing on the right-hand side is how many dollars in the unassigned fund balance do you have in fiscal 24 above your policy level? And so when you look at that light blue bar on the right side, in 2024, your expenditures were 50 million. Your required fund balance by your policy is 12 million. You had 26 million, so there's about 14 million based on the 24 audit of unassigned fund balance above your policy. Fine, that's no problem being above your policy, obviously. What we have built into our analysis is preliminary. All of this can be updated and amended, is to say, let's give ourselves some cushion and let's identify how many dollars we have in our fund balance above 30%, right? Your policy upper limit is 25, put a 5% cushion there. How many dollars is there above 30%? And that's that gold box on the right. That's about $11.8 million. So one of the things you're going to see here in a moment is if we were to conceptually take that $11.8 million, that would still leave you with 30% fund balance and move that 11.8 over to a capital fund of some sort. I don't want to get into the accounting of it, but sort of earmark that for capital. and still leave your fund balance at 30% of budget, which is above your policy. Again, just a concept at this point.
Can I ask you one thing? You said, if I
Yes.
take and move, what now? I want to see when you say I can move.
So if you look on the right-hand side in
Okay,
the chart, there's a line 4
right,
that's gold.
right.
And you go all the way over to column E and it says 11.8 million.
I'm with you.
That is the amount of fund balance that you have above 30%,
Okay.
which is above your policy. So it is the excess fund balance you have above your policy plus some cushion.
That's money I can use.
Correct.
Okay.
That's money that you could potentially move over to a capital plan and still leave your general fund balance at an adequate level, which is where you cash flow day in, day out, month in and month out. Okay.
Okay.
So it's just, again, we're not talking about a policy. We're just talking about how do we maybe take some of those dollars and help fund a capital program.
Okay.
Okay. So start with your existing debt. And keep in mind, this chart excludes anything related to utility debt, because the idea being that the utility debt you have outstanding around 10.5 million is paid for from utility revenues. So this is what we call tax-supported debt, debt that would have been issued over time for county projects, school projects, maybe community college, but nothing related to utilities. And at the end of fiscal 24, you had about $17.7 million of debt outstanding. And that chart in the upper left, every bar is a fiscal year, and it shows you the principal payment and the interest payment on that debt in the aggregate. It's actually made up of lots of loans, but this is in the aggregate. And you can see in the year we're in, fiscal 25, that total payment is around $2.5 million, right? And then it's stepping down over time. All of your debt is fixed rate. The payments will not change unless you change them or refund them or pay them off early. And we know the annual payments to the penny. We've tied out with your staff on that. So you're at $2.5 million for what we call tax-supported debt, and it's declining over time. And that decline over time is the beginning of some opportunity to take on new debt or new capital funding if you decide to, without necessarily having a budget impact. In other words, if you said, look, we are paying $2.5 million this year, but next year the payment drops to 2.3 and then 2 and then 1.9. If you were to mentally continue or budgetarily continue to appropriate $2.5 million a year, you are creating some dollars that could help fund a capital project or help fund debt service if you need to issue debt. That's a building block for what we're talking about here. Okay. The other thing I'll tell you on the far right of this page, it's a ratio that we look at. It's a policy that you all have, and it's measured in percentages, and higher is better. And what it's saying is the 10-year payout, it's saying in the next 10 years, forward looking, how much of that $17 million of debt will be repaid? And for y'all, it's 83%. So in other words, 10 years from now, 83% of this debt would have been paid back to the lender. Higher is better. It means you're paying your debt back quickly. You're not backloading it. That's a really good figure for that ratio. This page is important. It's the same debt. It's the 17 million of tax supported debt. But in this case, the way we've divided it is we've looked at the county related debt versus the school debt versus some capital leases. And capital leases is going to be for like vehicles and equipment, short-term debt. So it gives you an idea of that $17 million of debt, how much of it is for school projects versus county, and what are the annual payments for each category, okay? And this is going to be important because when we start talking about a capital plan and a CIP, capital improvement plan, and how you might fund that, we are going to look at it with a county model and a school model. The reason we do that is because the public schools have certain revenues that are restricted just for public school purposes. And we don't want to commingle those dollars and use restricted school dollars for capital inadvertently over on the county side because it's not a permitted use. So what you're going to see is we have a model that we've worked on with your staff to measure a capital plan or develop a capital funding plan for the schools and the county separately. Okay. We're really only going to talk about the county today, we don't have a list of projects for the schools at this time. I think maybe some of those conversations are evolving. There are 3 pages that I'm about to go through that are tied to your debt policies. And I'm going to hit them kind of quickly. And the main takeaway that you're going to see is that Vance County has debt capacity. In other words, having conversations about capital projects and possibly needing to issue debt to fund those projects is a very reasonable conversation. That doesn't mean you should, but the capacity is there. You kind of think of it like on paper. I can demonstrate that I can take on a car loan or a mortgage. You all have not excessively used debt. Your debt profile is relatively low and there is capacity. Now, that doesn't mean there's affordability, right? 2 different concepts. Many local governments have debt capacity, meaning we could take on some debt and still look very solid, but it doesn't necessarily mean we have the money in our budget to make that new payment. So the capacity is there, and these ratios that I've got up there and the comparisons all tell us the same thing. You've got policies, you're in compliance with the policies, you line up well to other highly rated counties, and you have capacity. So what we want to focus on is affordability. This is page 15. This is the school model, and this is the only time we're really going to talk about the school model. What we've done, if you work from left to right, and I know there's a lot of numbers, but I think you will appreciate it as we go through it. We start on the left with fiscal years. Column B is the existing school debt. That is the debt that's already been issued for school purposes. And remember, we know those payments every year by year. So column B is the debt service schedule for schools, $1.5 million, $1.4 million, $1.1 million, and so on. Columns C and D are placeholders that we might fill in at some point when we get better information or additional information about what school projects might be out there for y'all's consideration. We're not at that point yet, so we have not contemplated today any future school capital projects. Column E is an acknowledgement that y'all are making available about $775,000 a year for capital budget allocation for the public schools.
From the county.
From the county, okay? So right now, what's in this model is the debt that is already out there for schools and that annual contribution for capital. So it's columns B and E, and those are summed up in column F as in Frank, right? The middle of the slide, particularly columns G and H, that's where the money is coming from to make those payments. And there's really 2 primary sources of funding for school capital. It's the lottery proceeds, and we've got that at about $380,000 a year without any growth. And it is restricted sales tax at about $2.7 million without any growth. And that is restricted for school capital. Those are the 2 primary funding sources. You got a couple of others there in I and J, but those are one time or going away. So what we end up doing is adding the revenues up in column L. So you've got debt service and pay-go going out as expenses in column F. You've got revenues summed up in column L. and we compare those under column M as in Michael, and you'll see every year in column M, it's a positive number. There are more dollars or resources or revenues, whatever you'd like to call them, available under this model than there is debt service and capital. So there is not only capacity, but this school model has some affordability, meaning some dollars that could be made available for capital investment for schools. And for the time being, and we're showing the annual surpluses under column M, and we're just accumulating them under column N as in Nancy on the far right. That's because we haven't assumed any new projects, right? You start assuming new projects, you're going to use some of those excess dollars. But for the time being, when you look at that bottom right box, you know, between fiscal 26 and 30, there's something in the range of $14 to $28 million that could be used to support school capital. That's the last we'll really talk about today on school capital, but certainly as time goes forward, if there are conversations about school capital projects, we'll be able to revisit this. We've got a good model. We really wanted to focus on the county capital, however. But before I leave that slide, are there any questions anybody might have?
Just for clarification, the $775,000 is coming from county tax dollars and not from state dollars or lottery proceeds. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. And the QSABs are falling off around 2030, I think is when most of those would be paid out.
Yeah, that's a certain type of debt, and you get a little bit of a reimbursement from the federal government, and I think that's actually ending next year.
Okay.
That debt ends and the subsidy ends.
Okay, we did 2 or 3 QSABs over a period of 2 or 3 years. And I don't think they do those anymore, but anyway, so after 2030, our debt seems to be falling off substantially with school debt. Is that
Correct. Yes, you can see that under column B. It takes some bigger drops, I should say, particularly in 31.
Okay.
And I will note way over in column N, as in Nancy, at the very top of that, there's a $7 million figure. That is dollars that are set aside for school capital that have been accumulated. Has nothing to do with what's in your fund balance. It is school capital dollars that are set aside in a separate account that could be used for whatever school capital projects might be on y'all's agenda at some point for discussion or decision. So we've got a sort of, I'll call it a little bit of a savings account to start with. And then right now what the model's doing into column N is accumulating the surpluses.
So is that money in a restricted fund balance or is it in a separate capital fund? So that's part of our restricted fund balance when we look at those numbers first? Yeah. Okay.
But it's not part of the darker green unassigned.
It's not, yeah, I understand.
Yes, sir. Okay. All right. So this is the county model, right? So I had the school model. This is the county model on page 16. Same basic setup. Column B as in boy is the existing debt that's already been issued for county purposes. Call it non-school purposes. We have not filled in anything in columns C, D, and E. So we haven't, on this page, we haven't made any assumptions about new debt or annual pay-go, right? And so column G is essentially the debt service that's going to be paid. You've got 2 primary sources of funding into this county capital model. Column H is the FY25, so that's the year we're in, appropriation for debt at about $855,000. That was from current year revenues, baseline appropriation, and we're assuming that you can make that level of funding available every year, just as a basic assumption. Significantly in this model in column I, which is almost $4 million, is the 9 pennies that was put in place in fiscal 25 that we are showing as potentially being available for county capital investment, right? 9 pennies at 400 and some $1,000 per penny. That's $3.88 million. We're growing it slightly, and it begins in fiscal 25. That's a new revenue source. I know there's a lot of conversation surrounding that as part of the FY 26 budget.
And I just want to clarify, I know we went 10 cent over revenue neutral, but 1 penny was dedicated to the additional COLA for staff. So that's why the model is based off of 9 cent, because we have to keep that additional penny. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. So when you look at column G, which is the debt service that you've already committed yourselves to, and column K, which is those two revenue sources, when you look at it, same setup. Column L, we're showing surpluses, $3+ million a year of annual surplus. And over in column M as in Michael, we're accumulating those surpluses for the time being. And you'll also notice that column M as in Michael starts with about $17 million. That is made up of the 11 million or so that I spoke of earlier that you could potentially move from the general fund to a capital fund and still leave a very solid fund balance. That's about 11 million of that money. The other is 6 million and change that you had already accumulated and saved. So
2 million of that is committed, correct? 2 million of that is committed, correct?
I'm sorry, I missed it.
2 million of that
Revenue
beginning
replacement.
balance in the reserve.
6.2 million?
Yes.
2 million of that is committed. to the
Committed,
water
yes,
project.
yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
2 million is committed to the water project.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes, sorry.
So again, this is a starting point. This is not meant to be a funding plan for adoption, but giving you an idea. So this is where we started, right? Existing debt, some revenue sources, and some built up reserves. This is going to get a little simpler now. All right, so the universe of projects that we've worked with staff to identify and model, just go with the assumptions for now. You've got the EMS substation project at $500,000, fiscal year 25, cash or reserve funded. County jail facility, $45 million, fiscal 27 as debt. Now, as I'm listening to that prior presentation, I mean, that could be a brand new jail, that could be a major rehab, that could be buying into a regional jail. You know, we're not here. We have no perspective on what the right solution is, but just $45 million of debt related to a jail facility of some sort. EMS main station at $4 million, cash funded. Community college project / contribution, 5.6 million cash funded. So what we're modeling here is $54.6 million worth of projects. No schools, right? Nothing listed here for schools. We're not tackling that today. And a good chunk of it, almost 10 million in our model, is cash funded, and 45 million potentially would be debt funded. All right. And if we issue debt, it's 20-year debt. You issue it in the summer of 26, 5%. We model it in a very conservative way that the local government commission in Raleigh would be very happy to see. Now, if you decided you wanted to go to USDA debt for a jail project, that could be 30 years, right? So it's even a longer payback, lower payment, but it's got more interest over the life. So this is just a starting point for the modeling. And we've looked at 4 cases on the right-hand side of that table. We've said, let's not make any changes to the revenue coming into the county model. You've got that 800 and some thousand each year and the full 9 pennies that we spoke of. Don't change it. Leave that in there. Then we said, all right, fund these projects, but reduce that 9 pennies as much as you can in the budget you're about to work on, fiscal 26, to make it all work, right? So reduce 9 pennies down to something else, but still fund these projects. And then we looked at reduce the 9 pennies to 7 pennies or reduce the 9 pennies to 1 penny. Just knowing there's an interest in a conversation about that 9 pennies as part of your FY26 budget that y'all are going into. Those cases, does that make sense generally?
So one of those scenarios says the 10-cent tax we increased last year, we do away with it.
We don't do away with it entirely. We reduce it as much as we can. We could run that case, but what you're going to find if we run that case is we got a shortfall that we got to make up. So what case B did is take the 9 pennies down as low as it can go without creating a shortfall.
And do you have a projection on that number?
I do. Look at column D. We could take the 9 pennies down to just under 5 pennies.
What column, looking at column D?
I'm on, page 19, column. Well, let's start with column C, just for me. That column C is the base case where we don't change the 9 pennies. We leave it. And we have funded $45 million of debt, and we funded $10 million of PAYGO. I'm going down column C as in cat. Our debt ratio is okay, right? I mean, you have the capacity to do this in your debt profile. And what you're going to see is not only can we fund that 45 million and the 10 million, right? So that's a grand total on line 13 of $55 million of projects. Not only can we fund that, but you get down to line 21 through 24, you would also be able to do some other things down the road, depending on how you fund the other things, somewhere between 17 and $25 million of additional projects. But we leave the 9 pennies in place, into perpetuity.
So in actuality, you're saying the 9 cent will take care of every project we got before us now?
It would take care of that 55 million of county projects that we've modeled and give you the ability in the next 5 or 6 years to do some other things.
Where does the $17 million fund balance you said we use come from play?
It goes over to the county capital plan, and we use it to either fund cash projects, just write a check, or we use it to supplement your annual budget to make debt payments.
But it's not figured in this.
It is. We're using that.
Okay.
We are absolutely using that, right? Remember that county capital reserve started with around 6 million, 2 of which was restricted.
Right.
And we added 11. So we are absolutely using that in this scenario. Now, if you said, look, I don't want to move any money out of my general fund over there, I want to leave it all there, we could rework this. But our thought was, at least for starters, is there could be an argument to be made to take that roughly $11 million out of the general fund, put it on the county capital fund, and still leave your fund balance at a very solid level. So column C leaves the 9 pennies. Column D, E, and F, those are all funding the same universe of projects, right? The 55 million. But we're solving for how you might be able to reduce that 9 pennies in the budget you're about to work on. And in column D, you could reduce it by a little over 4 pennies, right? So let's call it going from 9 to 5 pennies. And fund the projects, but you'll notice at the bottom of column D, it doesn't leave you any dollars for other things, which is fine, right? It doesn't leave you, we solve like perfectly, leave just amount of the 9 pennies to fund the 45 million and the 10 million, using that reserve as well, that 11 plus 6 million. We use all of it. There's details in the back. So that we purposely said bare minimum to fund these known or identified projects, but we don't want to have anything running through the model for future capacity.
Can I ask that, we call him D, in terms of your work, in terms with Renee, in terms of scenario, if we take the $45 million out for jail and look at some other method, does that change the scenario?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you find another scenario for the jail that's a $10 million fix, everything will adjust accordingly.
Okay.
And I gather that's probably where we're headed in scenarios is what if we do this or that? What's the cost, the timing, and these models can measure that.
Okay.
Column E is just saying, what if we went from 9 to 7, right? So we're just acknowledging, all right, we reduce that by 2 pennies, we take it out of the model, reduce the tax rate essentially by 2 pennies. It can accommodate everything, and you'll see at the bottom of column E, it does leave you some money for future projects that are unknown, 11 to 12 million. And it also leaves you with some cushion if any of these other projects we have identified come in at a higher cost. And then the very far right, just reducing it by a penny. So it's just I guess a menu of potential options, but there are any number of scenarios that we could run. And, the modeling is all very well established. I think we're in really good shape with your staff. They've been very helpful. So we have the ability to run other cases going forward as you all determine you'd like to see things.
So basically, we're looking at about $400,000 to $450,000 per year per $10 million borrowed. Is that correct?
Hold on, let me get there. 450,000 per year per 10 of borrowing. Let me give you a page. It gets a little convoluted because we're using that cash. Generally speaking, $1 million of debt is going to cost you between $80,000 to $100,000 a year. I understand how you got to your number, but the challenge is we are okay. This is the slide. This is the challenge in it is we've got that 17 million that we're using. So it allows us to reduce the tax rate a little more because there is that $17 million of cash that we're putting into the funding mechanism. I'm on slide 55, way in the back. 55.
Yeah.
Tell me when y'all get there. But there.
I'm there.
Column B is the existing debt. Bottom right corner, 55.
Page 55.
This for the 5 cent. Right.
This is the case where we dropped the 9 cents as much as we could.
Okay.
Did you say page 55?
55, yeah.
It's 52. That's your book messed up. Your book messed up. Your book doesn't have the right.
It's okay. Yeah. Get mine. Yeah, you was.
All right, we good? So this is the case where we drop the 9 pennies as much as we can and still fund all those projects. Column B is the existing debt. That's the debt that you've already got on the books. Column C is the debt associated with the 45 million, the hypothetical $45 million borrowing. Column D is funding the cash, $10 million of cash, EMS 1, EMS 2, and Vance Granville. That's cash funded.
That's for the $55 million total. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Between C and D, we're funding the whole 55 million, some of it debt, some of it cash.
Okay.
So column G becomes the payments that got to be made, debt service and cash. Column H hasn't changed. That's that 800 and some thousand that was baseline budget. And then column I starts at 9 pennies in the year we're in, because you're going to get that full 9 pennies this year. But then you'll see that we're dropping column I to like 2.1 million. that is where we're solving for the ability to reduce the 9 down to around 5. And the way this works, way over on the right, column M, which is starting with that 17 million, right? You'll see that it slowly burns down to 0. So it never goes below 0. And what you're doing by reducing the 9 pennies down to 5, you're requiring to use that $17 million year by year to supplement your budget. And it's fine. I mean, it's just a budgeting tool, but I think that's what sort of got us a little different number on the amount of payment per year for the borrowing. That's because that kind of masks it a little bit. But that's how it would work if you were willing to fund that move that 11 million over to add to the dollars you've already got and use that money over a number of years to supplement your budget. It would allow you to reduce that 9 pennies to around 5. It would fund that full $55 million worth of projects, but it doesn't allow you any other dollars to do other things beyond that. Anything beyond that, you'd have to find new revenue later. Does that make sense? So I know you've got a lot of challenges on capital, but the way you've managed your finances, I think, puts you in a really good position of at least having some options with that cash and that fund balance. You have not excessively used debt, and you've got a nice decline in your debt. That's going to help you. So it may not solve every issue. Putting the 9 pennies or 10 pennies in place a year ago, I know that is not a light decision anyone would have made, but that is positions you in a tremendous way to at least consider some options for your capital needs. And I certainly understand there's a desire to look at ways to perhaps reduce that. But hopefully this gives you a starting point as you start to think about all of these projects. What, when, where, how much, cash, debt, what have you. And I think we're in pretty good shape to be able to react to scenarios if you run those through your staff. Any questions?
I wish I had a better understanding once I figure out what we were doing.
We do what we can.
I understand this. When I start catching on, like, oh, I got it.
It's some of our existing.
Yeah, real
debt.
good information, yeah.
Pardon?
On some of our existing debt from page 10.
Your existing tax-supported debt. You can look at it on page 10.
What, do we have any of those with higher interest rates?
Here's where I would tell you to go. We have done refundings in the past. Go to page 25. This has got all the pieces of debt that's tax supported and even the utility debt. It kind of organizes it by the series, how much is outstanding, what type of debt it was, the coupon range, that's the interest rate, and whether it's a general fund or a school or a water fund. You really, I mean, we have done refundings in the past.
I knew we'd done
a few
years back, but that just, so the only thing we
you got a lot of low rates, a lot of them in the ones, right? Which is awesome. That very top one is 5%, but that also is the one where you get the subsidy from the federal government. So it's really a lower rate after the subsidy, and it's going away, I think, next year.
Yeah. So there's not, I guess I was looking if there was an opportunity for.
Not a lot of low hanging fruit.
Not in the current.
No,
market,
sir.
It's not. Okay.
Maybe as things trend, we'll be able to take advantage of something. But right now, I think it would be I don't think you'd be able to get anything out of these as a refunding. Now, could you pay them off, right? Pay them off early with the cash you have? That's certainly something we could look at if there's desire. That would be another use of the reserves you have, is to pay off debt. What I would tell you is you'd probably be paying off debt that has a lower interest rate than any new debt you might have to issue. So minimizing the amount of new debt is probably right now a better use of that cash.
Yeah, the only one is this $30,000 one, which it's 409. That would be the only one that would be out there. And of course, the QSAB you said is,
Right.
we got credits on that. So
That's right.
what is that IPC loan?
You're looking at line 2?
Yes.
I think that's probably for some vehicles or something. That's a 2010. Hang on, give me a second. Fire truck. You got to go to page 34 to see that loan. I think y'all did that with a bank, maybe BB&T or SunTrust, now called Truist. And I believe that was for a fire truck. It was issued in 2010 and it's maturing in 2026. And our info on that one, it's on the left-hand side of that page. Looks like it was for some sort of fire equipment or apparatus. Any other questions? I know it's a lot of info.
I do want to say to you, this is very nice. It is, after a while, it just became easy to understand.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, because at first it was like all this stuff going on because I'm new, but then I got this, I'm on it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and remember, this has nothing to do with your operating budget, right?
Understood.
Salaries,
Understood.
any of that. This is just debt service and capital, but I'm glad it was helpful.
Thank you.
All right.
We appreciate you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The finance report.
Yes.
Yeah, now we got financial report, unit assistant list update, Stephanie, or
We talked about the tax rate a lot in that, so I'll just, we'll skip this slide. We can talk about it after Stephanie's presentation.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So I'm going to talk about kind of with the unit assistance list, like where we started, what we've done, and what we're going to continue to do to move forward. So the unit assistance list is based upon our prior financial audits. We had to meet with we have a coach that's assigned to us through the state treasurer that's going to work with us with our budgets, drafting budgets, discussing our internal controls, and any findings that were that result in us being placed on this list. So we did meet with her. So I know we have to send them a 6-month report, which we've done that. We got a 9-month report that that will be due in May. So they'll be getting that. So we'll see how that's going to be based upon the new audit that was just completed. But right now we still are on the list. Okay. So as a result of being on the list, some of the things that we were able to do, I'm not going to read all of them, but I just want to go through a few of them. One of the main things, and I think when the auditors came and talked with us, was training. So we have done some training. We're going to continue to do some training. We've done training with the department heads. Thank you, guys. I appreciate them for being very receptive to the trainings that have been provided and cooperating so that we can get to a better place with our financials. So I just want to point out some of the benefits of those trainings. So it has improved our efficiency in the department, has improved our employee skills. We're able to better serve our customers, and also more aware of the general statutes and other regulations that we have to abide by. And increasing teamwork and our collaborations. I do want to say thanks to my staff. I have a great team of ladies. If they're listening, if they're not, I just want to thank them publicly. I have definitely enjoyed working with them here. So one of the other things that has come up was about our internal controls. So we had to go through and look at our segregation of duties, making sure that our authorization and approval, documentation, and our reconciliation and verification was in order. So we have done that, but our internal controls is something that's always ongoing. So we're going to continue to review those as often as possible to make the adjustments that we need to keep moving us forward. One thing that we have instituted was a contract approval process that has definitely helped us. I think we have found during the audit, there were some contracts that we did not have. We were able to get some, but there were some that we did not have. So there is a contract process that was in place. So we will make sure that we have all of those moving forward. If there needs to be any revision, we'll make sure we're going to get those as well. We've also strengthened our controls at the bank. So we have definitely dual controls that no one person is able to go in and authorize a payment and approve it. So one is authorized, then someone else has to approve it. So we have that in place.
You said that's for every check, say it again?
Yeah, so for every check, there are two signatures. I think at first there were not. So for every check, there's two signatures. And now for all of the checks, we use a product that the bank has. It's called Positive Pay. So all of those are uploaded in the check. So if a check comes through that's not for who it wrote it to, it'll kick out. If the name is different or the amount is different, it'll kick out. And I get a Positive Pay report every day. Now, I had to turn off my alarm because I have an alarm set to make sure I check it. Because there are some that show up that are valid, but sometimes maybe a difference in the name. I guess where it comes over might not read correctly. So we have to but we verify those every day to make sure what we are submitting is actually what's been paid and what's coming out of our bank account. Okay, so we did close. There were two accounts that we had. I think we had one with JP Chase Morgan as a 1.5 million savings at JP Chase Morgan, and there was a 1 million with First Citizen Bank. The one with JP Chase Morgan, probably over the course of 3 years that we've had it, we only earned like $2,700. So we have moved those into Truist, which our interest rate is 4.1. So we're going to see an increase in our interest as a result of that. Same with the CD. CD wasn't earning as much when I look like the past couple of years. We only earned about $600 on the certificate of deposit. So that's also been moved into Truist. So we will get greater earnest on those. Okay, just want to go back to the PO process that we instituted. That's going to help us get better control of the budget, be more efficient. I think now the changes were made that if the funds are not available, the department heads they're not able to input the purchase requisition. And then through that process, there's still a review. It'll come to myself. I see if there's a contract, if it's paid out a contract. We're making sure that we have the contract on file. If there's a subscription or lease, because there's a couple GASB regulations that we have to do and a new one that's coming out. So we got to make sure that those leases and subscriptions are accounted for in that GASB regulation. So that review is also taking place. So the financial policy, what we're working on building the current financial policies that we currently have. So that's going to really, I think it's going to really bring the department, bring a lot of things that we are putting in place, put it in one place so that the department heads and all the staff member will have a better understanding of how we're going to operate moving forward. So there'll be roles and responsibilities that's going to be defined. Of course, internal control, the budgeting process, revenue recognition, how we're going to spend any approvals outside of the budget, making sure that they are aware and it's enforced that there's a budget amendment has to be done, anything that goes over the budget. So and then the accounting standards and any financial statement, all of this is going to be addressed in the financial policy. So we are in the middle of working on that, and our goal is to make sure we have it and get it to you for approval so it can be in place by July of 2025. So we're going to build on what we have, but that is in the works. Okay. So the last thing of what I have is like just some major expenditures, just different vendors that we're spending funds with, of course, City of Henderson's with the utilities, our contribution to the school system, Vance County School System, contribution to the library, contribution to the community college. So I won't go over all of them, but those, one thing that I did add to the last financial report that I did, because I noticed a lot, during the meetings, people asking questions like where the funds are going. So I'm open to if there are any changes or updates or revisions that could be made to the quarterly reports that I'm doing. Completely open to it for transparency reasons. So that's all I have. If there are any questions?
Does the City of Henderson amounts and also the Vance County, well, for the City of Henderson, does that include like the recreation department payments we make them and that kind of
Yeah,
stuff?
and also DSS, payments that DSS make to the City of Henderson.
City, okay.
Yeah.
And then for the Vance County Schools, does that include debt service?
Those are funds that we send to them, the amount for their general operations and also the amount for their capital. So those are funds that we send that we're sending to them.
So that would include their payments, or do we make their,
So I think we're making those payments that are, we're making
they
those
come out of a
payments.
separate fund? So
Yes.
it's not included in this?
Right, yeah, this is what actually goes to the school.
All right.
Yeah.
And what is MIT of North Carolina?
So those are insurances like for employees, medical and retirement insurance. That's just the name of the vendor. Yeah. And then the NCACC, that's of course, that's our workers' comp property liability insurance. And Vanguard's for the temp services that we're currently using because we're short of staff.
Is that all of that at social services?
It is.
Yeah, I don't know of anyone else. I
It's
think
Vanguard.
animal services has maybe one, but most of it is.
It's not Vanguard.
It's not
though.
Vanguard?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Vanguard is social services only.
Okay, so, okay.
Now, the Vincent valuations, is that additional money into the original contract based on when we were going through the
Reval.
bills?
Yeah, it's a reval.
So we paid them the full amount, and this is the additional funds that we paid them
Mhm,
to
to
manage
manage
the
it.
appeals?
Yes, sir.
Is this all, and this is all of that?
Yeah, we're done. We should be done. You haven't received any more invoices.
haven't.
Yeah,
This
we
is what
should be
we
done. We're
paid,
done
yeah.
with Vincent evaluation.
That's the last week.
So now that the appeal process is open, I understand there's been a lot of traffic in that area right
Mhm.
now. Will we handle those in-house now?
We are. I asked Portia. She said we should be able to handle it in-house, but I told her to let me know if not.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, she's here. Yeah. But that's right. That's correct.
And I just wanted, we said we on the unit assistant list only
Yes.
because of the audit was late.
Yes.
Because you just came on board.
Yeah, April
Mhm.
1st, yeah.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, they gave you a coach, not due to your
Yeah.
issue, but former.
Correct. That is correct.
Yeah.
So
Fiscal year 23. That's why we're on the
so I
UAL.
want to make sure that everybody aware.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is the unit assistance list providing this training, or where are we getting the training from?
So we're doing some in-house training on our, figuring out our processes. So we're doing training on that. We had Edmonds to come in and do an overall training of the financial system. I think they trained all the accounting staff, HR. We also had a training with the department heads that they went over the requisition process and also the approval of the time sheets and time cards in there. So Edmonds came and had done that, and we've had videos that we submitted out to everyone. We also will be doing some additional training with the staff through the UNC School of Government.
And
So
we
the
have,
yeah,
go ahead.
I'm
No,
sorry.
say, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So the training is always going to be ongoing.
Right. And we actually have a contact at the association, which we come in on site for 2 days. I believe she's a retired finance director from Pitt County, and she's gonna come spend 2 days with Stephanie and her staff as well. Yes, ma'am.
So how long do you get to stay on this list? Is it
So she said they review it every spring.
okay.
So we'll see what happens. I think there was some improvement from last year to this year, as you guys will see on Monday. So we're quite excited about that. So we'll see what happens in April.
Okay.
Yep.
So we were on the list because we were late last year, correct?
Yeah.
And then we're late this year. And so that would probably imply that we'll be on it for this coming.
It's a possibility, but we weren't as late as we were for fiscal year 23, which is good.
So is that, and then also the financial health. So part of what transpired is part of, also part of that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's why we have to do the
Yeah.
internal controls and submit our reports and stuff to them. So it's a combination of a couple things.
States in the process, or the LGC's in process of changing the dates that audits are required. Is that going to be effective?
It's effective now.
Yeah, with the 25. So it'd be December 31st instead of October 31st.
Right.
So I mean, so like right now, we're going to get it approved at our February meeting.
Monday
We're only a
night.
month late.
Correct.
Thank you all for the
Okay.
hard work.
Thank
dedication
you.
to
Thank
bring it
you.
up the par. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Appreciate it. So it's almost time for lunch. Do you want to break? You want to go ahead and
Go
break?
ahead and break.
Yeah, because
yes.
Kelly
Yes,
went
'cause we're finished
downstairs.
with
to
this report.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and break for lunch.
And I had a slide for tax rate discussions, but since all of the commissioners are not here, we can have that conversation during your budget work sessions. Just because I know you all may want to explore something different than where we are now. And so to give everybody the opportunity to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, be back at 1 from lunch.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you all.
yes.
Thank you all.
Yeah, Kelly went downstairs to get the food.